here we are for game number one of G2 versus Origen. And first Origen review we're doing, we've reviewed G2 a couple of times already. Gotta put the headset on and be ready to go officially. And the light mode is here. Everyone loves the light. Everyone's checking out the light. Red Origen. Yeah, that's a good point. Definitely the logos look a bit different here than you might expect. And yes, we live in the light here on this stream. Sorry about that, everyone out there. That's how we go. And we get to review what evolved to be the two big teams in Europe, G2 and Origen. Obviously, Fnatic are come back, and they are definitely right up there in terms of the calculation, but it's first versus second. And this is, of course, the cool new format where it's double elimination rewards for the teams that did the best in the regular season, which, as people who have listened to me cast before should know, I'm a really big fan of heavily rewarding regular season. I think, in the LCK versus the LEC, you have the best of one, best of three difference, which does muddy the waters. But I think overall, with EU's goal of having a super high pair of matches when they do their live event, for example, in Rotterdam this weekend, I think they actually were pretty smart in coming up with a format that rewards regular season, that makes those two last games super hype, that's a bit different. Like, they served a lot of masters, and it's not perfect. I think people who are talking about kind of the lack of difference between first and second, there's definitely some validity there. But I really like the kind of compromise they came to in the end. So let's compare G2 and Origen before we get started. We've talked about G2 plenty of times, and when you think about this series, you definitely think of G2 as kind of the IG-esque team that plays the aggressive style. They have flex assassin players, Caps and Wander, and obviously I've been very outspoken about how good a player I think Wander is right now. I think he might be, right now, the best Western player. And, apologies to players like Caps and Bjergsen, who are in great form as well. But, and then you think of Origen, and while we haven't reviewed this team, you think of Origen, you think of them as kind of a prep team, like a Korean macro team, a very smart team that prepares for their opposition, and from there, wants to play slow macro games and keep everything predictable. You definitely feel like G2 versus Origen is a bit LPL versus LCK, if you think about it in many ways. And while that's a nice thing to say out loud, what about the numbers? Like, is that just a feeling? Is that just, a cold breeze on the back of your neck? Or is there actually a real way to know how G2 and Origen stack up from stats? And stats are, sometimes very, very misleading. So you definitely don't want to index too heavily in them. But what I want to draw your attention to on this gamesoflegends.com G2 Esports page, whenever I say Games of Legends, as you can notice, I enunciate it clearly because I feel like more people should know about this excellent website. But I guess I'm starting to understand subconsciously that might make people think that I'm in some way like profiting from Games of Legends or something. I actually just think it's a cool website. And the guy who runs the website, Bingy, seems like a cool guy. Definitely no financial stuff there. If there ever was anything like that, I would talk about the conflict of interest. I guess I should also say, amusingly, I have talked about how at one point I was interviewing to be the head coach of Origen. I ended up going down a different path. And obviously, Andre just won Coach of the Year, so they're doing all right, our Origen. But apart from Deficio being one of my best mates, there's no connection between me and Origen at the moment either. So want to always be clear. If I'm going to sell out, I'm going to sell out for the right price, and I'm going to do it very, very obviously. So no sellouts right now. But shout out to Origen on a strong season anyway. But coming back to G2 and the point I was making about specifically things like what do the numbers say about playstyle? What I want you guys to notice, actually, you might think I want you to look to the left of the screen and see average game time. Because, G2 on the whole have a pretty short average game time, 31 minutes 49. But even though Origen play this Korean style from what we've seen, that's not reflected in game time. Look at this, 31:49, 32:22. Now, very important confounding variable is that G2 and Fnatic played the longest game of the season. And that definitely dragged up their average game time. It was definitely shorter. And also G2 have had, weird series where they're playing different players, 2 games in a row of good friend Promise Q instead of Mickey X with his injury as things happened. And G2 had been a bit slower as things went on. And there's always, people in chat pointing out words that G2 were definitely scrimming a lot less, especially with Mickey X's injury and the fact that they'd already secured their spot. But so all we're saying is average game time, not the reflection of this LCK versus LPL style, like narrative. So if you looked at that, you'd be like, Papa, no, shut up with the narratives. Nothing about kings, no legacies. Well, so far you'd be right. But what you do notice is in the aggression table on the right here. That is the label given by Games of Legends. Specifically, what I want you to notice is kills per game and deaths per game for G2. G2 has 17.2 kills per game and 12.3 deaths per game. So in the average G2 game, you're seeing 30 kills and deaths. So you're seeing quite a lot of action. And while that's only a number, just remember that number, 30 or 17.2 and 12.3. If you move to Origen, notice the kills per game and deaths per game. On average, there's many less combined kills in an Origen game than a G2 game. Because you add these numbers together and you get to 19.5, and these two numbers together are 29.5. So there's much more bloodiness. That's the stat, and bloodiness is the stat. I remember the first time someone wanted to run the bloodiness stat on broadcast, and they're like, wait, we can't say that. That doesn't sound... Because it sounds really morbid, and the amount of people who understand that bloodiness is the combined amount of kills that both teams get, i.e., a bloody game is one where one team has 15 kills in the first 15 minutes and the other one has 14 compared to, say, 3 kills in 5. And just because blood is kind of, very emblematic of what it is, iconic, I guess is the word I'm looking for. I'll trust you guys. Very bloody games when G2 plays. You're seeing action. You're seeing people get kills and solo deaths and invades and a lot of aggression. And when you watch an Origen game, you're seeing very much the slower paced game. But even now, you might ask me, okay, PapaSmithy, I see a 10 difference. I don't have a scale here. Good news. I prepared some scale. If you look at the combined champion kills per minute, and this is at another website that you guys should consider going to, oracleselixir.com. And it says on screen, combined kills per minute, team kills plus opposing team kills. So CKPM, or combined kills per minute, is the same as bloodiness. It's pretty much the same as the bloodiness stat. G2 Esports is number 1 at 0.93. And Origen is the bottom of the scale at 0.6. So whatever way we filter it, Origen is either the least or the most, and the same with G2. So G2 games are the most bloody, there's the most action, there's the most kills, and Origen very much are trying to make games predictable, only kills coming up when they're utterly necessary, they're happy to zone people away from objectives. These are teams 1 and 10. And, there's a lot of different superlatives you can use to describe a team that gets a lot of kills and to a team that doesn't get a lot of kills when they're both good teams. And this is 1 versus 2, and they're playing the game completely different based on amount of kills per minute. Completely different. And the people want to see blood, says Ozianen. Origen plays smarter, says OG Rimjo, I'm going to say, just because you're talking about Origen. It's fun to say it that way. I'm sure chat can come up with other ways to separate these teams. Is Origen the team that Monte Cristo wants to watch, and G2 Esports the team that Raz wants to watch? What does it mean? Is kind of a really interesting question. Which team does Papa prefer? Because I'm the Korean League of Legends lover, so you would think I would be all about the slow macro style. But we spent all of this split, definitely, and most of last split, talking about how the best way to play the game is one where you use your jungler and use your winning lanes to counter jungle, to battle ward, to take turret plates, and that kills and the threat of being killed by someone who has extra gold in the early game have replaced smart vision in how I believe the game should be played. So I'm actually much more of a fan of the G2 playstyle. I think they are playing the style that the best teams in the world will play, this aggressive style that's about taking over the game and making it so the enemy's like, well, I can't get my Raptors because that guy has 5 kills. So I kind of have to go and get not much really. And then I want to go and help my top lane and not lose turret plates. But those two guys have 7 kills and we don't have many. I think that exploiting early power and playing aggressive and getting kills is very important in the current meta, which has never been more about early game. So I'm actually on the side of G2's playstyle when it comes to how I think the game should be played. But it doesn't mean that if you aren't super polished and super able to make the early game predictable, that playing slow is categorically right or wrong. So one thing that I looked at in advance and that we can look at in this case is let's compare these champion kills per minute, combined kills per minute, I should say. Remember, 0.93 for G2, 0.6 for Origen. Let's go to another region. Let's see how this compares to the LPL and where the scale lies for them. So we're going to actually go to spring regular season in the LPL. And if you notice, the most bloody team, the team with over 1 kill or death per minute, i.e. combined kills per minute, is Invictus Gaming, which is obviously the team that I'm a big fan of their playstyle. So no surprise that G2 is playing in a style that is pretty emblematic of IG. Notice that G2 would be 2 in the LPL in terms of how much combined kills per minute there is in this league. But notice that Origen would be by far last. TOP actually is at 0.68, which is the lowest here, and it's shared by Vici Gaming. But TOP are good, and they are a strong team, so it is a kind of another interesting overlap. You wouldn't really say TOP and Origen are similar teams, and yet that's what the numbers bear out, and that's what the comparison bears out from like first to last, right? Kind of very interesting that things have gone that way. Now, let's see what would happen in the LCK. Remember, 0.93 and 0.6. So, you might be surprised to find out that the lowest team in the LPL of TOP at 0.68 would be the highest combined kills per minute in the LCK. And the scale is not between 1.03 and 0.68. It's between 0.68 and 0.54. So this does not necessarily mean that one region is doing it right or one region is doing it wrong. It's just that Korea is doing it different. They're doing it their style. And it's why, even though in our region, to me, the most aggressive teams are Sandbox Gaming and SK Telecom, we don't got a lot of combined kills per minute. The vision plays, the threat, the amount of people living on slivers of health in Korea is still really, really strong. Is still really, really commonplace. But it is just, I want to show you guys the regional differences that we're going to find out when we get to MSI. Is that China's doing a lot of killing, and Korea's not. And Korea's going to have to convince me that there are ways to defensively play through aggressive scenarios, just like Origen needed to convince me that that could be the way. And Origen, to their credit, had some aggressive games at the end of the season. Show LCS is the request here. We can do that. You won't be surprised by LCS. LCS number 1 is 0.69, so 0.01 better. 0.49 seems really low. Let's go back. Is that even lower than Korea? Damn. CLG games are boring. Come on, CLG. What the hell? Man, if you go 7-11 and you have the lowest champion kills per minute in the top 4 regions, damn. Well, sorry, CLG. Well, if CLG can turn this around, maybe we'll review one of their games. There's something for the future. Anyways, we'll go back to the LEC. We're staying in LEC land today. That's what we're doing. for good old G2 versus Origen. These are the playoff stats. We don't need those. But yeah, average game time. It's not often you'll have average game time being pretty comparable, but there being such a difference in how the teams play out. When it comes to amount of deaths, no surprise. Not many deaths for Origins. Kill to death ratio. Here's the one that's kind of what I wanted to show you guys also is a lot of people are dying, you know, being killed or dying in G2 games, and yet their KD ratio is still very strong, and Origins is second. And that's despite the fact that they're taking very different paths to their victory more often than not, which is quite interesting to take from this particular metric. It's like they're getting to their spots in very different ways. Like it shouldn't be a surprise that G2 have the highest goal difference of 15 of any team in their region because they just blew people out for a lot of the season. But Origen are number 2, and they're getting there in a very kind of slow and measured way. What does this all mean for our first review of the day? We're about to find out. So let's get away from the theoretical.
It's like the rise.
Whoa, you're too loud, Vedius. You're also asleep, so let's make him nice and quiet. Sorry, Vedi. I need you to shut up. All right. I'm gonna have to remember to pre-screen those for the future games. But the dulcet tones of Vedi and Ender will have to take a back seat for now. Sorry to say for them. So, looking at the bans to begin the stream so far. Draven, Karthus, Morgana, blue side bans. So, very, very common for a lot of junglers to first round Karthus. Yankos was doing it. Broxah certainly will still do it. And interesting that G2 didn't want to first pick Karthus, but were happy enough to see it. We weren't happy to see it slide to the second round and have it go to Cold, even though Cold isn't quite the same kind of Karthus reputation of player that you might think would be that way. The Origen bans, the expected ban here is definitely Sylas and Akali. Like, you can definitely understand those bans. But the KO ban in the first round is quite interesting. I know that regions value KO differently, and KO is definitely strong on patch 9.6, but first rounding KO on blue side is so bold. Like, you're probably not going to first pick it, but if you take it in the second round, it's probably at the cost of quite a lot, and I think the reward can definitely be wonky. So I'm, for example, super surprised that Origen don't ban Ryze, because I think that Ryze is a champion that Wunder and Caps play super, super well. Wunder was able to extend a game against Fnatic for 30 minutes. Amazing performance in a loss in that best of one. And then, you know, Caps, of course, can play Ryze as well. So the reason why, in previous weeks, Lissandra would be kind of an interesting first pick for a lot of teams, but Ryze does really well in the Lissandra matchup, and I think Ryze overall warps games harder, because especially top lane, there really exists no super favorable matchups against Ryze. That I'm really on the Ryze hype train. When it's somewhere like the LEC, Kalista priority is much lower in this region, so Kalista first pick's not going to happen. Rek'Sai is the other kind of first pick champion now with Karthus banned, and Karthus kind of skirts away from Rek'Sai where possible and tries to farm up. I feel like Rek'Sai is the strongest possible jungler, so Rek'Sai and Ryze are kind of the first pick champions that I'm considering in a spot like this. Can put the speed up a bit. So ends up being the Rek'Sai first pick, and that's, you know, pretty normal. I have seen these games before, but I actually didn't remember pick ban order. So I'm aware that G2 picks up Ryze eventually. I think Rek'Sai has a really strong skirmishing matchup against basically every other melee jungler. You can go Kindred, but a lot of teams aren't comfortable with Kindred comps mid to late game if they don't get huge snowball at the start. So it's not surprising at all that you just respond with Jarvan Galio. They're a duo that always does what it says on the 10, which is Cataclysm into Hero's Entrance, or Cataclysmic Entrance, as Atlas likes to call it. But but they can also be multi-way flexed and still always kind of do what you picked them for, because you have things like stone play in the late game, or warmogs, or more likely just stasis with something like the stopwatch. So as a duo, they always kind of do what they do, and LEC's the region most likely to flex the top side. As Vegas official is here, me telling him to shut up a lot has apparently woken him up. So that's weird, but whatever you're into, Vegas. Thank you for joining us. So I think so far the draft's gone very predictable. People in the chat pointing out that, like we talked about in our previous stream this week in C9 versus TSM, Cho'Gath top versus Ryze was something kind of unexplored that's come back, and it's a reminder that that's a good matchup. It's one where if you ever said, what about Cho'Gath? I'd be, oh yeah, it's good in lane, but for a lot of direct and indirect reasons, people weren't willing to play Cho'Gath into Ryze. You also kind of have to fifth pick it, because Cho'Gath has a lot of bad matchups, so you're so scared you're going to get flexed on, and then Cho'Gath's in kind of a wonky matchup. But yes, if you can guarantee it's Ryze top versus Cho'Gath top, I think you're okay with the matchup, but it's just something that's harder to simulate in the first round, especially. So they take Galio and Jarvan over Ryze, which you know for certain G2 will be picking up. So it's something to think about is, did they already have an answer for the Ryze draft? And could they make it predictable with their pick ban? Because I'm really, really not a fan of letting Ryze flex till the end. And then there's just no lane assignment where you can beat Ryze flex and also the coverage for G2's second solo lane. Because G2 are the team who most likely will draft two champions that can both go top and bot. They were doing it in the past. They're doing it now. It was same with Perks and Wonder as is with Caps and Wonder when it comes to huge overlapping aggressive champion pools that can play in both lanes. So I, against G2, would never leave up Ryze, because there's no two champions I can name to you that can be selected by Origen that can match two flexible strong laners. Like, it ends up being Ryze Aurelia in this game. That's a great example. What are two champions that can beat both Ryze and Aurelia? Like, you know, like, I'm like, whoa, like, Sylas is always going to be banned. Sylas on 9.6 probably won. But, like, who's the second champion that can beat both? Like, they're going to be able to play both in both lanes, and you kind of need a way to make it. I don't like Jace against Ryze and Aurelia. Like, he can do at times both, but as scaling comes in, it gets hard. Like, Jace and Sylas are so impossible to both get on a team. I don't think Cho'Gath is as flexible as you're giving him credit for here. I think Jace really, really does a number on Cho'Gath. You think back to Summer 2017 final and Huni trying to get away with that against Khan's Jace. Like, no. I think Urgot is a very weak laner early nowadays. So, to Professor Dr. Weedy. So, the range of G2 on blue, if it includes Ryze, who has almost no bad matchups in top, and then another flex strong champion, like, holy crap. So I always ban Ryze. If I was Origen coach on this, I would have banned Ryze. Now, something else would have gone over, but yeah, scary. So, jungle matchup is answered on both sides. G2 can approach this in many different ways. You're definitely not picking both solo lanes first round. So in this particular round of the draft, you take the Ryze. It will be banned in the second round because of all the headaches from it. And the Kallista's a really fine choice here. The Kallista at the time struck me as a little bit surprising just because Vayne is up and Vayne exists as a blocker champion to the Galio. But it really depends on what you want to play as a 5-man comp, because the extra engage from Kallista ult and the fact that she's a pretty reliable laner, like, she can definitely hop into the Galio taunt, but I wouldn't say she necessarily gets countered by Galio by any means. Kallista Galio for a long time, as Chad is pointing out, was considered the god tier duo lane, especially in Korea. We had a lot of Kallista Galio. So in some ways it's a denial, but there's definitely a lot of merit in the Kallista, but I must admit, I was a little bit surprised. And then first round here, as Origen, AD carry would be very, very standard because you wouldn't be revealing anything about your draft. You're flexing your Jarvan, so top lane is certainly not going to be picked here. A mid laner could be selected, but the problem with selecting mid laner here is that your double ban doesn't do anything because you don't know where Ryze is going. Ryze has a lot of lane counters in mid. Vel'Koz is probably the most famous one, but there's a lot of champions who can run into Ryze in mid. Even Ori is a good matchup into Ryze. So, in this case, I would understand safety first and just taking an AD carry. You just take Kai'Sa. You have good hard crowd control in this draft, so that part makes sense. But, you know, what are you banning? You know the enemy is looking for a solo laner and a support. So as Origen, the safest course of action is just to ban supports. From a G2 side, it's really what they want to play. Like right now, they just have champions that are strong at one item, strong in the late game. I think Ryze is squishy at one item, but they have champions who are very, very reliable in their first round. So I more look at the bans from Origen as coverage and the bans from G2 as kind of interest as to what they want to play on blue side. So the cannon ban here is a really smart one. It's one that Alphari was playing even before it became kind of consensus blind top lane pick over and above a lot of other champions. Even before Jace first pick was a thing, people were playing a lot of cannon in the LEC. It's also, consider what happens in draft here is that G2 expect that Origen have picked no solo laners and they have to blind something. So why not take away the most blindable champions at Patrick's pick? So with the cannon gone, Aurelia is a very safe blind here because it can kind of lane against everything, even though the magic resist or magic damage reduction on W is gone. So I like cannon as a, let's give them less blind tools in the second round. I was a bit confused actually with where the pick ban and Jace. So these are two very, very strong blind picks that are being banned. It leaves Zoe open. It's so weird because I had a very strong opinion on Zoe, but Korea really moved away from Zoe in the last couple of weeks of the season. Kind of surprising fashion. I think Zoe is really, really strong. It is a mid lane only pick, but it's a mid lane only pick that can always kind of work. So you would understand the Zoe pick up here from Origen as a largely risk-averse team. They're hovering the Vlad, but they're never going to lock Vlad here because Ryze beats Vlad super hard in lane. So they're mostly just saying, hey, I know you're thinking about this, so hey, maybe we're thinking about this. And then the opportunity for G2 here is to pick a support. Braum would be the bread and butter. Good answer into Zoe. You get to see a solo lane before you lock in your support. This is definitely not like a lane counter pick by any means. A lot of teams would consider Tahm Kench in this spot, but I think Braum fits G2 better because they've got two Braum aficionados. They've got Mickey X and Yankos, so it's a flex pick, guys, if you think about it. And then this is the spot where G2 can do their G2 thing, where they lock in the second solo lane that is very flexible between Wunder and Caps. And I think the selling point to me, I think when Caps was being kind of courted by G2, you get to be on the same team as Perks, who I think has a really good voice. He's really good at communicating. Very smart about the game and has grown to be a leader despite starting from a very tender age. But I think, to me, if I'm Caps, the fact that Wunder is my other solo lane, I'm like, all right, well, where the meta's going, we can definitely play. Like, what is the overlap between Wunder and Caps' champion? Is it 100%? Like, I reckon Wunder could play top Ahri, you know? Like, you get to have this moment where you would probably blind the strongest possible top laner here. So to me, it's Aurelia. Because Hecarim has some weird matchups. They decide to go with the Hecarim in this particular case. I thought the Hecarim priority was a little bit high for me in this game number one. They went Aurelia later in the series. But the Hecarim priority here doesn't play into the double blind that they've been doing for a lot of the season and what I'm talking about with the Aurelia. The Hecarim is a champion that I know in LEC was rated super high when it comes to top laners. We saw a little bit of it around the world. It's a champion that I think is very strong in the Sonataric meta. I think Sonataric with Hecarim is the god trio right now. It's the champion that abuses Sonataric the most. I think as a blind pick, it's actually pretty weak. Like, the problem I have with blind pick Hecarim is you will always take Ignite Teleport when it's top lane. This is obviously not a top lane flex. I think I was in chat calling for the QV top lane Rek'Sai. People don't know we played 3 games of Rek'Sai in pro play in 2015. But Ignite Teleport Hecarim is a unique champion in that you post 6 don't need the flash as much because you have the ability to ult away. The Ignite gives you kill pressure, and your lane trades are fiercely melee most of the time, right? So the Ignite is the sort of thing where if people overlook it, they can just take a surprising death that you don't see coming. But even more interestingly, it gives you very good gank assist because even pre-6 you can just, nudge someone back, Ignite, jungle comes in. But it also does make it pretty transparent that you're going to be playing around top side, or top side is going to be very killable. There's a lot of champions in the 1v1 that beat Hecarim top. And it was kind of on Origen to decide their kind of pick of the poison, and they go for top lane Urgot, which this could be a great prep point for 2 days' time. We know, of course, that Swords Champion pool includes Urgot, but been very few top-level pro games of top lane Urgot. A lot of Urgot jungle in the OPL playoffs, but Urgot top has been a bit more unexplored. It's a lot less reliable in the laning phase. A lot more damage in the early game, and you get to a decent place of tankiness as the game goes on, but because you don't have the sword, the shield for trades, kind of like Origen doesn't have the shield for trades, you can get into some pretty awkward spots in terms of 1v1 trading. But when it comes to where this 1v1 matchup goes, I actually think Urgot beats Hecarim very reliably as the game goes on. I know the casters were a little bit undecided about how the matchup should go. It's one that if I just sat there and thought about, and it's one where if you just think about, as we can just fast forward into the game, G2 vs Origen game number 1, if you think about how Conqueror Hecarim versus Conqueror Urgot works in a 1v1, eventually you get to the point where, you're a melee-only champion in Hecarim. He has ranged engage, yes, but he's a melee-only champion when it comes to his trade patterns is, oh boy, thank you very much to Skara for the 1200 raid. Much appreciated to you, sir. Lots of love to Skara. A little Korean heart for you. Thank you. Good timing, too. We're actually just loading into game number 1 here of G2 versus Origen. If you think about how Hecarim versus Urgot will go, Urgot got a lot of damage buffs. He had his shield moved onto his E, so he only has his shield when he hard engages, and so not as reliably in laning trades. But as the game goes on, eventually Urgot is going to be in melee range of Hecarim. So he's going to hit his ultimate, right? Like, it's unconscionable to miss the ultimate. You just hold it until all of his movement spells are done. And then you're going to be able to rotate around a melee champion who's, twirling around like a helicopter, doing damage to you, and do percentage max health and have an execute against a champion that has no range spells. Like, there's no way that with item parity, Urgot doesn't beat Hecarim in a 1v1 as the game goes on. So this is actually a really tricky lane for Hecarim, and it's why I thought it was bold. In my head, I was still remembering the Aurelia game as game number 1, mostly because the Hecarim game was kind of an anomaly for me, because if you blind pick Hecarim in a game like this, you're going to have some degree of lane that's very hard to enter 1v1. Kind of reminds me of Rumble, where it's like, yes, this champion can do well at certain parts of the laning phase and can spread his lead well, and Hecarim is a really strong champion against Zoe. If this was Zoe Ashe from Origen, I'd just say fuck it. Go with the Hecarim, because Hecarim in team fights and from a teleport flank owns champions like Ashe and Zoe. But in the Kai'Sa being the secondary carry here, Kai'Sa can always reposition. It's the unique thing about Kai'Sa. She wants to approach a fight front to back and just auto attack from the back line. But then as early as she wants, she can press her button and be elsewhere on the map. And there's so much hard crowd control around. There's going to be plasma somewhere. You're going to be able to reposition. the chance of Hecarim, Onslaught of Shadows, actually occupying the time of both Zoe and Kai'Sa is almost zero as the teamfight phase comes on, and the chance of him being able to handle Urgot in the 1v1 is also almost zero. So that lets you know that the game state needs to be in a pretty particular way to actually get full value out of Hecarim blind in this game. So I was surprised. I thought that was a little bit bold from the side of G2. And what does it all mean? It means that G2, to win this game, is very much going to be about, you can definitely win lane, win game. Like, you can snowball this comp, absolutely. If the snowball doesn't happen, it's going to be Ryze having very good side lane against both Urgot and Zoe. So Zoe's not going to have a role. Ryze is going to have a really good role in this game based on the champion lineups. But Hecarim is both going to need to be shielded and also going to need to be very on point with playing between lanes. If you can play a 1-1-3 in this game, like have your solo lanes as this is, and then say 3 members in the bot lane, or if you can just play 4-1 between 2 lanes, Hecarim, while he doesn't offer a lot in a grouping sense, can push and roam, but more importantly, can cut between, say, mid and top or mid and bot very fast. Movement speed is something that can never be denied from this horsey. So because of that, you can get a lot of catches as the game goes on, especially if you have, say, a tempo lead. You can get warding. Let's say you get ward supremacy as G2 in the enemy red side jungle around Baron. It's so hard to defend Baron as Origen because you're super scared about this Hecarim kind of ping-ponging between top and mid lane and getting catches, because Hecarim's engage range is insanely huge. Onslaught of Shadow's cast range, I actually don't know it off the top of my head. Maybe someone in chat can confirm it, but between the movement speed that makes it feel like you have a larger range and the cast range of the spell, like, you go really far. Your threat range as Hecarim from the moment you enter vision is insanely big. And then Ryze has Realm Warp also to reposition. So a lot of catch options with Hecarim, but I think the lane assignments he has, specifically against Urgot, is pretty unmanageable as the game goes on. But let's start playing it out. So thank you very much to everyone joining us, and especially to the new viewers who just joined recently. A lot of it's been just set up so far. For Game 1, we're doing the full best of 5 of Origen versus G2 today. So standard laning matchups, I think Hecarim versus Urgot's probably Hecarim favored at certain points of the early laning phase trades, but I don't think reliably so. Like, Urgot has the ranged auto attack. With gank assist, I think 2v2 wise, if G2 get there first, it's very hard for OG to get, say, a double kill or something like that. But early lane trades, I think Hecarim with Ignite, the summoner spell, is going to give him some thoughts. I think Alphari would probably be more respectful because he's against the Ignite laner. Zoe versus Ryze. Early lane, definitely I'm going to think that Zoe's going to be just fine after about, say, level 5. You need a couple of points in Battlestar to fully make things happen. Jungle pathing here is really interesting. So let's see what information was revealed at level 1. No deep wards from either team. So actually very respectful. You would expect Origen to be respectful both because they play the slower game we talked about with their lower champion kills, but also because Braum is on the enemy team. Level 1 of G2 is actually pretty fierce. You have to be very tricky about how you play around the level 1. G2 could definitely have considered a late invade somewhere, but I guess with a no-flash top laner, they didn't want to try anything too creative. So it's a leash start and a no-leash start. So the no-leash start, the moment you see this, and by you see this, I mean the minimap scenario of Origen already being bot lane, you're 85% sure that Jarvan started top. You're not 100% sure because Urgot didn't give him a leash, but you're pretty sure Jarvan started top at this point if you're G2. Whereas the moment that you see this, honestly, the fact that the dual lane isn't there, you know the dual lane was giving a leash. So both sides, I think, are pretty aware of where things start. So Cold able to walk over. He doesn't walk over a ward, as you notice. He goes for a quick red to blue. But with the fast leash, I think this is actually a really smart read by Ankos. He understands that Jarvan is likely to start Machete. He does single target camps very fast and AoE camps very slow. He wants to avoid AoE camps wherever possible. So he comes to defend his blue and defend the scuttle. So I think up to this point, both junglers actually are pretty aware of what's going on. But this is where things actually start to come to a head. Now, Rise is going to be able... It's all going to be about what happens here. Like from here, as Jankos, you can back away and be done with this. Or as Cold, you can back away and be done with this. But it's specifically how this all approaches, given the priorities in their side lane. So it starts up. The moment that... We'll watch this again. This is very important. This is actually one of the most important parts of the game here, is this scuttle grab. Because it's very clear here that both laners want this scuttle, and they're going to invest super hard in the scuttle. So actually we need to inspect what is used. So Unburrow used. That's fine. Just an auto attack from Caps. And then you see the collapse here by Cold. So the 2v2 happens. The most important thing to take away here. Watch as this happens. The EQ is instantly going to be flashed away from Jankos because the trouble bubble would have hit. So already on the back foot. Caps is not walking up to proxy the trouble bubble. You can tell from this the comms are from G2 back away. And the reason for this most likely is that Alphari has priority in the top side. It's level 1 Wonder versus level 2 Alphari as this happens. So it's pretty big that Jankos flashes here. I don't think he's actually under any kill threat, even if he tanks the trouble bubble. And I think if Caps tanked the trouble bubble, there wouldn't have been a 2v2 here. But instantly, huge lead here. Notice what happened. So it doesn't seem huge. It's only one Scuttle Crab being picked up. But Scuttle Crab is taken. Caps is chunked out. And now Rek'Sai has no flash. So Rek'Sai's threat now in side lanes is way down. The fact that Rek'Sai has that targeted flash on Burrow makes her super strong to deal with and tough to deal with because she does a lot of damage and what she does is very reliable. With flash down, you don't respect that same potential for early ganks. And now suddenly, your Ignite Teleport Hecarim is almost certainly not going to have much backup from a Rek'Sai. And in the mid lane, you're going to have a Corrupting Potion disadvantage in the 1v1. So this actually throws off this game quite a lot. Before that happens, you have Rise with targeted root, and then the basically target engage of Rek'Sai being threat on the mid lane. That's actually, now with Cleanse and Flash still up on Nukeduck, basically gone because the Flash is gone from Rek'Sai. And the top lane, your lane that needs some snowball help, really wants to use the Ignite aggressively, now is not really expecting there to be any early ganks topside. You lost Scuttle topside, there's River Control topside for Origen. This puts G2 into way more of a hole than it first appears on paper. This is actually a lot of early game, and a lot of the reason why Rise, Hecarim, and Rek'Sai can get a lot of snowballing done, which is kind of what we talked about. We're looking for G2 to keep the champion kills high, to look to play towards level 6s and early breakpoints, and to set the tempo of the game, rather than just opt into a late game scaling situation. And already, now, suddenly, they have way less tools to do so. So overall, good play from Origen and both sides to read what was happening. But I think G2 were first too bold to start damaging the Scuttle. And then Jankos kind of flashed a bit early. And it's the sort of thing that in another game with different lane assignments wouldn't have impacted the game as much. But as we'll see, it actually impacts this game extremely greatly. Cold able to sneak in. There was no pings here. I was actually unsure with Vision what this all meant. Good call from Caps here. So he didn't know that Cold was there, but Caps is super decisive on this play. There was clearly a communication is that you can come bot lane. The exhaust on Patrick is the reason Mickey lives. And then suddenly, you're chasing for kills. There's an obvious counter kill from the side of Origen available. Really good teleport here. And all it really costs Caps is some ranged minions, right? Because the play starts when he's here. Now, this play is super punishing if Nukeduck's already pushing a minion wave. Against a teleport middle laner, I don't think Caps ever makes this play. So let's say Nuke Duck had teleport, had used it back to mid lane, right? Like that's a scenario that could have happened in this game. Then you can't make this play as caps because Nuke Duck would have gotten mid lane earlier, started the push earlier, and you'd lose the better part of at least 1.5 minion waves, maybe 2, maybe even like another minion in the 3rd minion wave in this scenario if you had made this play. But because Nuke Duck has the cleanse, understandably against the team he's against, he has to walk mid. It takes a lot more time for him to punish the minion wave. So Caps teleports bot, cleans up this play. He's super decisive about it, so he hasn't wasted any time. And we can see little Zoe on the minimap slowly pushing in. That's all Zoe can do. Rek'Sai is already around, so can pick up some of the experience. The minion wave doesn't actually hit the turret. Sorry, putting closed captions on. I'm watching the minion wave here in the middle. It never actually hits the turret. Ends up being... During the replay, I assume some of it did. But as you can see, Ryze comes in almost CS for CS here. So something you can do with teleport mid laner versus cleanse mid laner is plays like this. It's actually a really good interview with Showmaker. Mina was asking him about the Corki versus Lissandra matchup, which I think is quite similar to the matchup we're seeing here. And he was talking about back timings. And the point you make as a Corki is you don't want to back pre 8 minutes if you don't have to, because you can then just roll in super quick with the package, and there isn't any time for the enemy to get teleport play off. These are what happens in lanes when it's teleport versus cleanse, is the onus is on the teleport mid laner to see if he can make a play before the cleanse mid laner can actually respond. It's a very tight window sometimes. In some games, it's not even something we discuss, but roam timings like this, where you get a lot and it costs you almost nothing, really heads up from G2. They understand how to play the early game, and the communication is clearly good there. So shout out to them on that play. And it bails them out of, remember, a pretty awkward spot. Jankos is still Hail of Blades Rek'Sai, the most threatening Rek'Sai in terms of profile, but no flash because of the earlier kind of mismanagement around the Scuttle Crab. So this is a good stabilizer so far for G2. It gives them a small gold lead. It gets them access to a Scuttle Crab. Wander's is the happiest point of this game is Wander, because he got to tank no ganks against the Jarvan. The moment Jarvan shows up bot lane, Wander's almost certainly getting a free level 6 and obviously a lot more safety in the 1v1 matchup against the Urgot early. So he's definitely really happy with how this game has gone. So here's a counter roam timing as Ryze went for his second back. You always plug and play a fairly early tier back timing. Watching the pings here, because the ping is, okay, we see Ryze, he's about to hit mid lane as they're looking bot, but there's already the Ghost Paro bot side providing coverage. Whose is that? I assume it's... When is it put down? I'm interested to know who went Ghost Paro. I would assume it's Rek'Sai, right? That's the most likely person to have a Ghost Paro. It's already there. I'm watching the mini-map, guys, trying to work out whose Ghost Paro it is. Damn, this Ghost Paro is OG. Holy crap. It's Kallista's Ghost Paro. I would never have noticed this, but look at this. From 1 minute 43, watch the Ghost Paro. What are we going to name this Ghost Paro? This Ghost Paro is a control ward they had in the brush the entire game. This Ghost Paro definitely deserves a name. What's a cute name for a Ghost Paro? Come on, chat. Someone deliver. And I go for the first cute name. Triparo is not a bad name. Terrence the Ghost Paro. Sam the Ghost Paro. Casper's too on the nose. I'm not gonna go with that one. All right, Vedius the Ghost Paro is what we're gonna name this Ghost Paro. This Ghost Paro is a fairly short-ranged control ward from 1 minute 40. It's still providing them. Jarvan's not getting behind Kalista and Braum. Like you feel so hard done by it because Vedius the Ghost Paro is on the case as this gank happens. The only angle they can be ganked from is mid lane. Remember that. The only angle they can be ganked from is from through the lane, the middle of the lane, because Vedius the Ghost Porter has done so well and so good a job at providing coverage that usually as a blue side team, you push up to the middle of the lane, you can be ganked from behind through the tri-brush, but not because Vedius is on the case. We keep zooming forward. This is like that Bjergsen control ward he teleported to, except Vedius never even needs to be replaced. Like, Vedius the Ghost Porter defends bot lane for all of this time and averts what is a gank timing that would have been a lot more subverted without this vision. Vedius the Ghost Porter. Nicely done. Replace Vedius. Well, you know, some people live that life. But G2 Vedius, and remember, he did predict G2. Came through in a big way here. Really nice Ghost Porter. A rune that I think is super underappreciated. We'll see more of it. We see a lot of Halo Blades 80 carry in the current meta. Kog'Maw takes it. Kalista takes it. Jhin, of course, if he came back, would consider taking it. And with the changes on 9.7, when we come to MSI, will be 9.7 or onwards, right? The Eyeball Collector feels like it's never been weaker. 80 carries don't check brush, so you don't see a lot of Ghost Ward, is it? Zombie Ward. You don't see a lot of Zombie Ward from 80 carries, so Ghost Power actually makes a lot of sense. And if you're playing against Origen on Sunday, sorry, against G2 on Sunday, you better be checking for that Ghost Power in the ward there. You definitely have to move that if you're a G2, or respect it if you are G2's opponent. Run, Perks! Still a double kill. Even with Vedius there. Vedius showing his dual allegiances in this case. Sad boys. Important they pick up this kill. So, usually, Vedius would be enough. Because at this point, you're like, okay, I know what's coming. But in this case, Origen have a lot of lockdown. And G2 could have given up this turret. Let's watch how it should have gone. Let's imagine a different game. Origen walk up. Alright, G2 are like, crap, Jarvan's here. We know Zoe's probably there. You give up, you know, Mickey X can poke, that's fine. But you give up the minion wave. And by now, Perks should never stop his stride walking away. Like, walking away, walking away, walking away, walking away. Instead, at the point where we talked about walking away, here it is. Here's the moment where Perks fucks up. We can see it. Let's watch it in slow motion. Okay. You know, I could argue could have walked away already, but wait for this point. You'll see it. You'll see it. I went nice and slow. All right, they could be coming over. We're not 100% sure. And then watch good old Perks, our friend. He's walking away. He's going the right way, guys. He's going to go walk to safety and get away from Jarvan Galio. That's what's going to happen. Remember, his flash is down. Walking away, walking away. Everything so far, beautiful. Perks is nailing it. Oh. He turned. He turned towards the minion wave. Turned towards the minion wave. And then you best believe, nailed it. Got the last hit. Melee minion. Nailed the melee minion. The melee minion is dead. Unfortunately, it's Jarvan Galio. He probably got a call with Rek'Sai saying, I'm around, I can help, but the speed at which you can engage as Jarvan, like Rek'Sai just can't do anything there. Flash is still down on the Rek'Sai. With the full information here, it's really, really, really greedy. It's not even a cannon minion, guys. He got a melee minion. And that's not what you want. To Perks' credit, during the post-game, he talked about this mistake and the fact that he should have backed away. So there was some information on that. As we come back to live and someone died. I think we get eventually a replay with better context here. I think we get the replay. The replay on this one's going to be more interesting than try to understand it from the short amount of information we had. So this is after the death spot lane. As you can see, Braum and Kalista, best friends forever. Going back to mid. It's a good roam timing from Urgot. Urgot walks over a ward, though. So let's see if we get... Do we get context as to... Alright, so... Cold comes from bot side. I assume he reset because he's full health, mostly full mana. And Mithy comes from bot lane, already being involved in the previous kills. They chase up and Caps... He has flash up. He doesn't want to use flash. And he just doesn't fully take into account the fact that Urgot had roamed down. So this is just Caps kind of spacing out, I think. They're probably still talking about the tail of the tape from the previous fight. And it just ends up being a really good roam timing to come mid lane. Nicely done by Origen. A lot of their punishments this game have been really on point. And their plays always kind of strike me as really well researched, really well kind of thought out timings. Whereas G2 are a bit more kind of vibrant and a bit more organic with some of their roam timings. Nice jump from Origen. So just a blue buff trade-off here. And if we look at the kind of tail of the tape is what's happened this game. Urgot, like we mentioned, is naturally doing well in the matchup against Hecarim. There was never any jungle swings at all. So we're seeing what a lane matchup looks like 1v1. Where Urgot made one roam to mid lane, but otherwise they were just fighting. And it's Urgot in a small advantage, which, given the melee versus range situation, and the fact that the Jankos had no flash, I think actually it could have been closer to CS for CS if Jankos never lost his flash, but end result is, you know, small lead for the Urgot. Rise dying is the main reason that we have a CS lead for Zoe, but all three lanes are winning, you should notice. All three lanes are winning, and the jungle CS is up. So this is just Origen playing the early game square in a way they wanted the early game to be played, and G2 making some mistakes on their executions in the early game. And it's kind of telltale. When you have a Rek'Sai camping for Kalista Braum level 5 rather than trying to hit lanes, that's a Rek'Sai whose early game didn't go to plan. Like, Rek'Sai is the one that shows up and needs to be countered against. She has the OP advantage of having map hacks when she makes those ganks. But instead, it's counter gank, you know, information gathering from the Rek'Sai. Bot side control is Origen's. They already got some leads around this lane. Vedius the Ghost Power, his second coming is a lot less impressive than the first. Now he has flash up. Like, you could have understood a kind of brazen attempt to steal, but I think the call here is just, okay, that's their Infernal. Give it an Infernal. You don't hate a YOLO look it over and flash over, but you also understand the decision that's made. And that's just a reward for Origen's roam bot side. Important to note that if the bot lane double kill into red buff steal, into mid lane gank, into Infernal, that passage of play doesn't happen if Perks just leaves the turret. But whether that was his own greed or the team calling for him to stay or too much confidence in the comms from someone else, the flow-on effect is huge. It's the sort of thing that you appreciate in games of League of Legends now that, now that League is 10 years in, we can really ascribe a lot of intent and a lot of smarts to why the game plays out. And I think the overall level of League of Legends goes up every split. You now appreciate, like, that play seems innocuous going for that melee minion, but the cost is so insanely large. And then Origen just really want this game to be 4-1. They have the ability for Zoe to walk up and threaten. She's going to hit her one item power spike on time. We already know that Urgot should beat Hecarim very comfortably in the 1v1 as the game goes on, outside of a lot of jungle help. And when that jungle help happens, you're going to start nuking down turrets with already an Infernal Drake. So early game here is going perfectly from an Origen perspective. They're definitely not unhappy about this. Good gank timing. Very decisive from Jankos. Good to see. Even though the first 10 minutes weren't his, just coming in straight over the wall. Doesn't matter, control ward's there. So I think that's going to catch someone off guard because of how decisive it is. So nicely done by Jankos on Nuke Duck, actually getting his real flash out. So Origin, they really need to start working on their map states here. But in general, they're pretty comfortable with how this game is playing out. The role of the champions on Origins early, of G2's early, like if G2 don't hit their one items on time, they're very, very squishy and they can maybe burst down one person. The reason why I say that is they're building for damage. You know, Triforce, Warrior, and Seraphs. You know, there's Seraphs scaling, so it's not even damage really, but obviously doesn't provide tankiness till much later. That means that G2's front line with a vision advantage blows someone up fast because they're all building damage and they're high burst early game champions. But if they don't control the map, if they're not choosing the engage, any one of them explodes to, say, a Paddle Star plus Jarvan combo. Even Cinderhulk Jarvan plus Zoe has a lot of threat on these three particular champions from G2 on the top side. And that's not even mentioning Urgot, who's, you know, building into the Black Cleavers. So right now, G2 need to be pretty careful about when they choose to move up and when they don't. He's chasing in here super hard on Mithy. Just watching Wonders play here. So the lane swaps happened. Sending Urgot bot lane. They want to get maximum turret plates. Do Origen. And their way to do that is to go top side. And Hecarim can't deal with a 1v2. And they don't have the map control to know that this swap is coming until Urgot actually hits the minion wave. I wonder, could just teleport bot lane, but then it gives a big extended TP advantage. So he actually tries to find something through all the commotion. Like he tries to make something out of nothing here, Wonder. And it's actually quite smart to make a play like this. Like it looks super bold, right? He's just rushing in there and trying to, like, super deep into the enemy jungle, an area that you don't control. But consider what he does know. He does know that Urgot's bot lane with no teleports. So there's no way for there to be a 5v5 from his perspective. That being said, Caps is backing, but Caps does have teleport on his back. He also knows that Kai'Sa's hitting the top lane wave, so she'd take a long time to respond. And the Rek'Sai Braum backup is there. So it's just a case of getting a free objective, in this case a very small one, a flash, out of the Galio, which relieves pressure from Kalista in future fights. And he couldn't enter lane against Kai'Sa anyway, right? He needs the support. He needs help in that case. And he's a champion with pretty good mobility. So he's going to be able to get to bot lane and lose what looks like maybe 3 melee minions in a wave. But he actually gets something before he makes the transition. He doesn't use his flash to present his teleport, to use a teleport advantage to the side of Origen. So I think that's a nice little heads up thing there. It's not God tier. It doesn't change too much, but it's definitely a cute play. And then they actually, the moment he enters lane, try to make a kill happen. Nice body blocking from Caps. Pretty sure he body blocks this, right? Can you actually tell who gets Fear Beyond Death? I assume it's Caps here. Yeah, it's Caps, I'm pretty sure. Nice body blocking. I don't think Wanda would have died anyway because he would have been blown up before the Fear Beyond Death would reel back in the target. But just something I was looking for there. Nice positioning for sure from Caps. Good teleport again. Caps has had 2 bot lane teleports that have been pretty consequential in an early game that otherwise has been defined by how good Origen have played. So gold-wise, 400 gold lead in mid. Farm for farm top lane's pretty big here for Wonder. He needed that kill to bring back any particular gold lead. The 500 gold lead, but Jarvan has definitely been ahead of Rek'Sai this game and read a Micah book, and otherwise the lead's pretty slim, right? The Infernal's the biggest lead here for Origen. So back to the kind of lull state where you want to take control of the map as much as possible. G2 at this point trying to simulate the sort of map control they wanted to have in the early game. The original plan for G2's early game was for Rek'Sai to index a lot of her time topside, allow the Hecarim to trade super aggressively with the threat of Rek'Sai being there and Jarvan not, and ignite on the Hecarim. But instead, because the flash was used so early, things kind of fell apart there, and They're only now getting topside control at 13:30 when turret plates are about to fall, when second Infernal Drake is about to spawn. But G2 probably aren't strong enough to fully take over bot side. As that's nice from Nuke Duck. He picks up the teleport that was used by Caps. If you're confused, by the way, you can't get a random teleport from the W anymore, the more sparkles on Zoe, but you can pick up enemy teleports. That's still a mechanic in the game. And that allows the Zoe to get there, given back time. And Origen get a lot. This is a really cool play. So let's go over the play from the start. Urgot is on a back timing. Wants Black Cleaver before Infernal spawns. And Zoe's mid lane, as we know. So Urgot's saying, I need this back timing. And to be fair, Black Cleaver completion is really big. They run mid lane, but the teleport allows them to cheat because this requires Alphari to back with less than a minute before Infernal spawns. So this is not an ideal time to be backing as Urgot, a champion who wants to be present and counted for when he doesn't have teleport. So it seems super greedy. Because think about how this went. Alphari was bot lane, teleported without gold for Black Cleaver. You can tell because he has 798 gold, he has 800. He pushes out and backs again. So on the one hand, if they lose Infernal, it's probably because Alphari teleported without Black Cleaver gold and then really wanted Black Cleaver. Instead, Origen actually able to turn this into a win through some very smart map plays and the fact that Zoe was able to pick up teleport. Because if you think about it, G2 spent all their time organizing topside. All right, we couldn't get this vision earlier, but let's get this vision. Let's get some turret plates. Let's set up some advantages. And the cost of that should be bot side control. But if Urgot's teleporting to bot and then having to full reset again, he's not going to be there for the control. And they're going to lose out on Infernal control, which is their easiest objective to claim. Instead, because the teleport is picked up mid lane, Urgot actually is able to get a second back timing off. And Nuke Duck, as you notice, he teleports bot. He calls Urgot into mid lane. You can tell that because if you watch Urgot's path, he's going bot. Then he's called into mid by Nuke Duck. Nuke Duck gets to push out bot lane, which shouldn't be possible given that Urgot is on a second recall. And they push out mid and bot with Urgot mid lane and get Infernal control. This is actually something small, like picking up a teleport. But through that control and the fact that they were able to push out bot as they made this play, Hecarim tended towards bot side, wasn't in position for the Rift Herald mid. They take the mid lane turret, and they have control on first access to Infernal with, as you notice, control wards forward. This is the Origen kind of low champion kills per minute, but still super high win rate in the LEC that get advantages. Because they play the enemy like a fiddle here. This is really nice map play from Origen because they're getting a lot. And yes, Kallista's topside the whole time, but Kallista staying topside is a good call from G2 to salvage what is a really nicely played early game. And Cold's played the early game perfectly so far. Dominates, on point. Like, for sure, Cold is winning the jungle matchup here. I think we're seeing some nice G2 plays, which are the really nice teleports from Caps. We're seeing OG play the map very intelligently where they can. Like, so far, like, you pause it at 15 minutes and you're like, this is going to be a legendary series. Because both teams are showing good stuff, and it plays into how different teams they are, which is really, really refreshing, right? This is sort of League of Legends I love. I don't like it when you have pick comp versus pick comp, and both teams are best at pick comps. They draft pick comps. Because if you do the same things, the game reaches a point, and then if you can only do the same thing as the enemy team, but worse because you have less gold, you lose. But if it's a team that's looking to do 1-3-1 versus a team that wants to team fight, that's always a really interesting duality that is really fun to explore. But would these teams beat Jin Air and KT? This is a meme that comes up a lot. I commented this on my last stream. I don't agree with LS on his opinion on the strength of G2. I don't have a read for how serious or how joking it was, but if you just present the argument there, I think KT and Jin Air are really bad. So G2 is a good team. They would definitely beat them. And Origen, I think, would beat them as well. And Perks is just playing top side because that's where the vision controls are. If you're wondering why Perks took top lane turret, you know, while all the Infernal stuff was happening, and then went back top lane, he is playing to where his team put down vision. His team realized that they could much more easily put down topside vision, and it's 5 minutes later than they wanted it, but he's playing towards vision. So Perks is making the right call here because they can't re-invade bot lane. Right now, they have Seraph's Embrace, half a Trinity Force, a Warrior Enchant. If they try to re-invade bot lane, the items that Origen have right now are ones they can't beat. And if you have an item disadvantage as a team that's very squishy, you know, they're very much about damage in their early purchases, you don't decide which part of the map you go to. The enemy team decides which part of the map you go to. So all of Origen's controls bot side, you just say thank you very much, and they go top side. So it's very strange to see a Kalista swap top, take a turret, and then swap back top, but that's just where G2 have been able to set up control. So far, playing to vision. We're too early in the game for Origen to have any other objectives they want to... Like, they can't accelerate the pace of this game anymore, realistically. They could send multiple members bot side, and that's what they will probably want to do, is take this bot lane turret. Nuke Duck can repel turret dives for a very long time. In a 1v2, he's got blue buff and Luden's completed. He even actually has flat pen already. Like, he's already got the Oblivion Orb, so they really can't deal with him at all. So the measured play from Origen here. The fun thing about watching Origen play is, like, I know how they play because they play like all the Korean teams do. Like, they're just smart. They play like the textbook tells you to play. But the textbook was written in 2016. And arguably, the soul of it was written in 2014. And that's the part I take umbrage with. Patrick goes down. They get the turret around their pressure. That's exactly what you would expect the team to do. And Caps is just doing his thing. So he's on Ryze. Again, Ryze is the one who has the best matchups. We're already at the point where cheesy all-in with Ignite, maybe you can do something against Alphari. But I would say if Alphari and Wonder run at each other 10 times, even right now, I'd say 8 times to Alphari, 9 times. You'd almost expect a jungler to be there if you saw the Hecarim fully engaging on you. And then the Ryze can outrange Urgot quite a lot and play around him. Like, he's not going to get flipped. He should be able to just beat him in a standing damage trade. And that's even before Seraphs is done. Now, when Seraphs is done, I think it's like done and dusted 10 out of 10 times to Ryze. Right now, it's kind of like 9 out of 10 times to the Ryze. And then Zoe doesn't want to be in a side lane defensively wave clearing, especially in a game where the team has tempo, where Origen is ahead. So Ryze is for sure the one you want split pushing at this point in the game. And as we outlined earlier, as the game evolves, you kind of have River Hecarim or Jungle Hecarim looking for a pick or grouping. Because obviously in the Siege, Hecarim just kind of sadly doesn't do anything because he's not going to ult under a turret. So Caps is the one that wants to be the string at the end of the ball if Origen's a cat. Like, you definitely want to just look tasty, know you have really good side lane matchups as the Ryze, and force Origen to find different ways to send different members and hopefully not do things around the map, not actually increase the pace of the game. Remember again the stat, 0.93 champion kills per minute average in a G2 game and 0.6 in an Origen game. The champion kills per minute right now, if it was 15 minutes, 5 kills, it would have been 0.33. So we're at like 0.28 champion kills per minute in this particular game, which lets you know this is a really slow game, which mostly is the sort of game that Origen is known for. But it's mostly because Origen neutralized them in the early game, blew Rek'Sai's flash, and slowed down the game. For sure, Origen have brought G2 down to their level when it comes to slow games. And they've mostly come away with some really nice things to show for it. They're babied a little bit by the fact that it's 2 Infernals. Like, if this is 2 Ocean Drakes, actually, Origen is like, all right, we need to do something. But for now, at least, I think they're very much ahead of the clock without necessarily blowing it up. I think this is the point when Vedia said Origen should freeze the lanes, not to push them. to G2 to pick up. I think freezing lanes is something that LS is a big fan of, that honestly is a mechanic that a lot of people don't explore. I think post 14 minutes, freezing becomes a real strategy that can be considered. Most teams are too scared to do it because they're not confident in what the freezes will mean multi-lane. Because you can't just freeze all 3 lanes, right? You can definitely slow freeze a lane, but in general, the gameplay of the lane at the medium or pushing is much more explored and practiced than the freezing. And freezing, I think, is situationally super strong, but on average, not viable. So I think teams don't really look for those freezes. And it does mean that in games like this, Caps ends up with, say, 40 or 50 more CS than he would have in a game where lanes were frozen. And minions are weird. Like you say, like the minion wave situation of how they freeze and how to freeze, like there's a lot of text on. Like I've watched multiple videos and then some of them were disproven and a lot is up there. You can definitely still freeze. It's definitely not the nightmare scenario of always frozen or never frozen, but it's just unexplored. And it's the reason why you don't see it very often. So Origin, what are you setting up for is obviously the question to ask the team that's in the ascendancy. Because right now, they've lost topside control, which is what G2 fought for during the second Infernal Drake. The next Drake's spawning, so it's been 5 minutes. They found bot lane turret. That was the easy one to take. Top lane turret, because it's where G2 is strong, Origin haven't found a way to actually get a vision scenario to get 3 out of turrets down easily. They still have kind of the modicum of vision around the Cloud Drake, but Cloud Drake's not a must fight for Drake for G2. G2 would love it because Hecarim obviously selfishly scales off that stat more than anyone else. But likely Origin just take a free Cloud Drake, and it's just not something G2 can hope for. Throwing out Fate's Call to get an inner turret, like that. Any ults you can use to take an inner turret bloodlessly are actually super high values, so the Fate's Call there is well used. And now the game becomes around Baron. Baron is the objective that Origin want the most, and they actually lack 2 things that are needed to make this game about Baron. Because you only respect Origin's Baron play if you have outer top lane turret, and you also have Origin also have Baron control. You need both those things for you to be actually scared about the Baron. Now, I'm always someone who wants to talk about Baron speed and what the realistic chance that enemy team does Baron is. If you look at the side of Origin, if they're collapsed onto Baron, which, could definitely happen, they have Cinderhawk, Jarvan, and a Galio to tank it. So when it comes to Baron tanking, they have a lot there. Kai'Sa, as a 1 champion at 2 items, has incredible Baron damage. So Kai'Sa has very good Baron damage. Now, around her, the Baron damage is not that great. So I think overall, you give it kind of a 7.5 out of 10 Baron damage or Baron speed threat. But it's more about one person has Baron damage. They tank it forever. They can turn off Baron very well. Jarvan, Galio turn, a Urgot flank. It's not Orenhorn levels of ease, but it's pretty reliable. And they're in a good position in the game. So this is definitely a team where G2 can't say, oh, you're just not going to take Baron, you're super squishy. That's not the case here. The Origin Baron threat is very good. So really all you need further is to make this game around Baron. And to me, that's the way Origin most likely win the game, because G2's members at these item points consider what they have for tankiness. They have Ninja Tabi Glacial Shroud and some health and Merc Treads, an Overshield and Merc Treads, nothing, and some health. They're very squishy. Paddle Star and 2-item Nuke Duck does insane damage to the lineup of G2 if they try to face check around Baron. So Origin from 20 minutes onwards with Double Infernal is saying, we need the Baron. The Baron wins the game. And if they get the Baron, they make G2's life way harder because you can't play side lanes with Ryze. And you already had a good matchup, Urgot versus Hecarim. So things are in a really, really awkward spot. Now, it's probably a time to comment on a topic that got pretty heated on social media. LS talking about Morello's on Zoe being bad. The thing you have to understand about Morellonomicon is the selfish stats you get for completing the item suck, right? Like, the healing reduction is a unique thing, but let's talk about like the health and the ability power. Right? It sucks. You don't get more magic pen from it. It's very gold inefficient for the immediate stats you're getting. So what? And everyone knows this, or should know this as pro players, is that slot efficiency and price and special effects, like all these things are relevant. So let's consider his inventory, because it should be noted that one reason to build Merlinomicon over another item is something like, I ran out of item slots and I might as well upgrade this. So he's not going to sell the Dark Seal or the Corrupting Potion, obviously not the Ludens, Oblivion Orb, or the Stopwatch. So he is full item slots. So one reason to upgrade Merlinomicon here is to stay at that. And that would not actually be super incorrect, because everything else he has is relevant in terms of item slots. So I think that's a reason you see Oblivion Orb upgraded sometimes, even when it doesn't work on healing reduction, is the fact that you have 6 items. But there's actually more to it than that. If the game is going to be G2 Origen start Baron and can tank Baron really well and do damage to Baron really well, which we agreed they could, and they can turn off Baron really well, then the game is going to be red side team defending Baron. So let's assume they get control wards in the Pixel Brush and baiting Baron. And then G2 have 2 options. They walk through the very narrow corridor, which is which would lead into a control ward right now. I guess I can probably put my mouse on there. The very narrow corridor, or they go through the blue buff entrance. There's 2 ways into Baron if you are a blue side team. If you're coming in like that and Origen have done the right Baron prep, you have to come through 2 narrow chokes to get there. Yes, you have an Unbreakable, but the chances of Zoe landing either a full combo or a Paddle Star on some and a Trouble Bubble on another are insanely high. And if you think about how the teams are coming in that way, the Hecarim is very likely to be leading in. Now, Rise Realm Warp could do crazy things, but I'm going to guess Rise Realm Warp is going to be used for checking much more than it's going to be for a 5-man, fiesta in the faces of Origen. So given that Zoe is at a really accelerated point, the fact that she has a full item build in terms of 6 items that she doesn't want to sell, and the chances that you're going to be hitting damage onto either Hecarim, a champion with a lot of team fight sustain, or even, the eventual redemption from Braum being negated by healing reduction. I actually think this is a game where I would go Merlinomicon, because most team fights from G2 involve a Hecarim diving onto Zoe's face. The Hecarim could reliably get to Zoe. Every other champion that the Hecarim wants to get to, which admittedly is only Kai'Sa, is way harder to get to. And if you're going fully Hecarim ulting onto Zoe every time, Zoe's going to have to self-peel. Zoe will always be able to do damage to Hecarim, because Hecarim will be in melee range. And if Hecarim can heal through and they can't confirm that first kill onto the Hecarim, then their Baron bait play, or even just most traditional team fights, are lost. So I actually think in this game, the Merlinomicon value is very, very high. Because of how both team fights and the game state is at 20 minutes, I feel like it makes a lot of sense to go Merlinomicon, because the alternative is to sell an item and build Needlessly Large Rod, kill people faster, right? And that works really well against the enemy team. Just, it's 2 good options, right? But I feel like healing reduction value here is not low. I think healing reduction value here is high because of how team fights look like, with Hecarim just diving in onto the Zoe. And I think if Hecarim dies, the rest of G2 have to kite back, because they don't really have further divers. Like, yes, Braum could theoretically get in there with the Fate's Call, but they're in a state where they're behind, and Hecarim needs to find value out of the start with a pure dive damage situation. And so, given all those variables, I think this is a good game for Merlinomicon. Now, to Ellis's point that people mindlessly build Merlinomicon every time, I think he's right. I think there are games where finishing the Oblivion Orb is bad, but I don't think this game is a great example of that, in my opinion. That doesn't mean that his arguments around more AP being very desirable are wrong. I just think in this particular game, with how the game was likely to play out from Origen's perspective, this is the correct time to go for the Merlinomicon, and I don't see any other item slots for Nuke Duck, so I don't really think it's viable for him to sell any of his items to go to the Sludge Rod, because Oblivion Orb is just core, right? So long-winded, but, you know, it was an emotional argument between multiple people, so I wanted to give my full thoughts on the matter. So still, we're looking at Origen and saying, how do you get the Baron, 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 Baron? Like, there's only really one thing to think about for Origen, yeah, is Baron. Baron, 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 Baron. That's all that's needed here is Baron. Question in chat. So you're saying it's better than upgrading boots in this scenario? I think you feel really bad having unspent gold, and you couldn't spend the rest of the gold on anything. So if your choices are entire Oblivion Orb to Merlinomicon purchase and brown bags, or sorcerer's shoes and 800 gold in the inventory, I can't hate going for the full-on Merlinomicon. So Origen, like we say, to get Baron control, they want top lane turret and control wards around the Baron. So G2 is very smart in their lane assignments. Notice what we have already. Even though it's double teleport, it's Ryze bot lane, not Hecarim bot lane, and Ryze mid. And that might sound counterintuitive, because you can say, wouldn't Ryze want to be mid? Access to blue buff, Realm Warp into the pit, Realm Warp checks, Hecarim as a true global teleport. But we already talked about this during Champion Select. Ryze beats Urgot in the side lane, and Hecarim loses to Urgot. So the fact they went for this lane assignment already confirms to you that G2 are not fans of the Hecarim versus Urgot lane matchup as it goes on. So that shows you that. That's why Caps is bot lane, because it gives them a lane where Urgot's less incentivized to try to split the map. And that means that actually G2, more often than not, can have a pressure lane in bot and the ability to realistically contest 5v5. So Caps takes down a turret. So Origen have got everything. The timer's on. So if there's a, if I could just throw up a sand timer, the sand timer right now is Origen have everything they need for Baron. They've got their core items. They have an item lead. They are in a huge position of power. They have control wards on the Baron. Now, they don't have a Baron ward. Amusingly, they would want a control ward on Baron to confirm it and to also stop a blue trinket from going over it. But this is where Origen decide the fate of the game. Everything from now on is an Origen decision or an Origen indecision. So Ryze goes to side lane. The build path from Ryze is very interesting. You'll notice he's gone for Spellbinder. So this is very much a burst Ryze build. And this Ryze is powerful. Don't get me wrong. But, it's going to be ability power, movement speed, and overshield. But otherwise, super squishy, right? But the Spellbinder is very much a catch build. And it tells you also, and should tell Origen, that Caps is always going to be in the side lane and bot lane, etc. Origen should know that Caps is, for now, the split pusher forever. Because he has a build that makes perfect sense if you're coming in from a teleport flank with your Nikes and the Spellbinder. Alfari's a level under against Ryze with 2 items. Like the lane ward from Origen, it's really good. So, just going over the minimap here, if you're wondering why I'm replaying. They take the turret, as we know. They push in for a bit. And it's actually a full team reset. So this full team reset, you won't often see a full team reset from a team that's actually thinking about doing Baron, because it actually gives up their control wards. So this is where Origen do their practice play. Like, they push in and get all the Baron wards they could ever want, right? Perfect Baron vision. But then everyone just leaves, and level 10 Rek'Sai with a warrior in chat and otherwise naked gets to clear out control wards for free. Like, this is actually a very poor reset here, because otherwise, why did you invest all those control wards around the Baron? Like, you could have definitely put down one control ward to help with the siege, but you just literally give up all of your Baron vision to do this. And that's, item timings is usually the reason for that. But if I'm G2, I'm like, oh, they're not actually going to start the Baron in the next X minutes. This is a lot of control to give up for free. And it leads to one of these pushes and pulls, as you'll notice. A lot of games, the casters will call it out, I always try to talk about it, end up about Baron and about, we came and put down vision, you cleared it, but we backed and got more vision, and then you ran out of wards, and you don't have the wards to face check. You're not strong enough to face check this, therefore the ward exhaustion will be the reason we get the Baron. And that's another way you can approach it if you want to, as Origen. But you need to always play around this vision. You already know that G2 is going to send Caps bot lane because they've shown from how they approached the last few minutes that's their play. With this lane assignment, based on Alphari's back, they want 2 members top. They never want Hecarim to actually be in any way not controlled. And that's not so much a 1v1 thing. It's much more about you want Hecarim on a short leash so that whenever Hecarim does something, you guys get first decision over what that is. Like, you're controlling how the Hecarim is moving. It's Hecarim's under turret, or Hecarim can't roam because he's scared of being cut by a Galio as he makes the move. And OG start the Baron. And this is exactly what they need to do, is start Baron. So they start the Baron for the first time. Love the vision toggle. Vision toggle here is we know nothing, but we know Baron is being started. Blue trinket was used by Perks. They have no more blue trinkets. But they do have control wards to start poking in vision, but that's all they have. Good time to start Baron. On point, 23 minutes 30. Fresh shoppings from multiple members. So watching the play, they draw the teleport as they want to. Baron's at 2,000. So Origen have many different options with how they approach Baron. Are they going to burn it? Are they going to turn off it? Now, we don't get to see them during these minutes, but we know Nuke Duck is poking, and Perks is just on top. Sorry, Patrick, I should say, is just on top of the control ward, damaging the Baron. Galio comes in ostensibly to stop, to burn. Like, the only reason for Galio to come in and use his full taunt and everything on one member is that they're going to finish the Baron. So at this point, I assume Baron is going to die. But Baron is actually only now up to 2,000, and if you notice, they are still dumping damage into Baron at the end. Like, Patrick uses his Q on Baron. So it seems like there was a call to burn the Baron, which Mithy was playing on, and the Baron didn't die that fast, and they didn't update based on the new scenario till very late in the piece. Like, you shouldn't be queuing. Like, there's no reason for Patrick to walk up and queue unless the call is to finish Baron. And Mithy walks up and uses Taunt on 1, which admittedly is the enemy smite, again, making us think with the Baron, with the vision toggle, that they're going to burn Baron. But in both cases, they're not. The Baron, as we can see, is defended, kind of surprisingly, by G2. And G2 only use Braum ult and the Kalista ult. They get a trade of ults here as Alphari blows his ult. And they actually, yes, they use teleport, which is important. Onto Caps, but surprisingly, a Baron from Origen, they don't feel like they had a clear call as to whether to finish it or turn. They end up doing neither. And now with all that time spent invested on Baron, they actually leave themselves out of position here. So this is one of those Barons. If we're grading this Baron, it seems like a confused Baron. It's a movie that had some interesting plot lines, and at one point you thought it was going a certain way, and then it's kind of ended. And you're like, oh. So pretty strange. Like, how often do you burn a Baron down to 2,000 health with Jarvan, Galio to tank it, and neither Jarvan or Galio used their ultimate? Like, no Cataclysm was used there. And, you know, no Hero's Entrance is used. It's very peculiar Baron for how things would go there. They don't lose the turret mid. You get reminded that Nuke Duck does crazy damage. What happens if they keep going and G2 steals it? Very good question from Nexi. Then the whole play and the 3 control wards into clearing vision to 3 more control wards into Baron is completely messed up. You definitely don't want to allow it to get into smite range, but 2,000 is pretty close to smite range if you think about it. And they're ahead in the game, so there should never be a scenario where Jankos can get in the pit. But they were disconnected on how they peeled off. Like, We didn't get the health bars revealed, but we saw, Jankos get taunted by Galio. If you think about where the Baron was at when we finally saw the Baron health bar, the Baron would have been like 4,000 when that Galio taunt happened. So it just seemed a bit cluttered. There was no call of start the Baron, then turn. They clearly didn't have that call. Their call was to burn it, and I guess they overrated their Baron damage, or they thought G2 would be too slow. It's a sloppy Baron, is all I can really tell you there. What would a Baron steal do there, though? So a Baron steal would allow Ryze to enter a side lane with no one that can answer him, the 4 members of G2 to enter mid lane. So I would imagine it would be Ryze bot, G2 members mid lane, and then Hecarim would plug and play minion waves in mid and bot both be being pushed, and then camp the jungle looking for a collapse onto whoever was trying to shift between inner turrets into inhibitor turrets and find a catch. It would allow for catches. The Baron really helps the Ryze because Ryze has no side lane that can match him. So it wouldn't necessarily instantly give G2 an inhibitor, but Origen's main win condition is the Baron. They have every step beforehand. The checklist for Baron of 3 outer turrets, Baron vision, enemy team significantly far behind in the team fight. Everything else in the checklist, huge tick for Origen. So for them to lose Baron when they did everything to get it, resets the game. It no longer means that G2 have to march to the drum of Origen's Baron focus, and they get the Ryze great side lane matchup. So it actually really undoes everything about what Origen is doing, so they can never let that happen. So why is Baron getting to 2,000? The magic number, even this early, is like 3.5, 4K is kind of like, all right, we're turning off Baron at 3K, 4K, 3.5K. But 2K is very low and tells me that they were trying to burn it. Okay, though, you tried to get it, you got burned a bit, you lost a bit of mid lane turret, but you're ahead as a team still. So the game is not over by any means. You haven't lost the game here as Origen. It's just not a great Baron setup in general. Well, I guess execution. Setup is the wrong word. But the chunk comes down. Cap's actually over the wall, gets Patrick out, and playing towards is something I was alluding to with my surprise at 3 control wards into full back. The problem with Baron setups is the time where you can get control of the Baron pit is not just, hey, 5 members run to the bloody Baron and put down control wards. It's where are your side lanes pushed out to allow you to safely put down the 3 control wards you need and then actually get value out of those control wards rather than, let's all rush to the Baron, put down 3 control wards. Oh crap, our minion wave and bot lane is pushed in by 2 people. 2 of us are back and all our wards were cleared out. It's very much a building process. So the moment that they were full reset, and especially with Patrick chunked out for a bit, suddenly, realistically, it takes about another 3 to 4 minutes to simulate the scenario you were in before, i.e. push up all the waves and get down the control walls. Everyone's backed and feels good about their items. And every 3 minutes into the game, the golden numbers at the top, and this is something I talk about that other casters don't, but the gold numbers go up. So there's 45,000 team gold and 44,000 team gold. There's 90,000 gold in the game. Every further 10,000 are these huge legendary items that can really change how a lot of things stack up. The people that are behind are getting back on even footing. Sometimes the people that are ahead don't have good shopping times in order to spend their gold. Not every 5,000 gold spent by 2 lineups of 5 champions are spent equally. In fact, none of them are. Scalings are always different. Breakpoints and diminishing returns are always different based on champions and sometimes even compositions. So there's no guarantee that the next time you get the sort of Baron control you want, the game hasn't shifted because you allowed the game to naturally extend. This is a game with a lot of interesting item purchases. I guess I should talk about Spirit Visage on the Urgot here. It's very non-standard. As you can see, G2 trying to use Realm Warp with the longer map to try to get a pick. We'll watch this, then we'll talk about Spirit Visage. So Patrick got chunked out. The vision got a little bit more even around the Baron, as we can see. Yes, the control of the pit, 3 control wards is from Origen, but they have no vision ahead of the pit. Ryze walks up during all of this play, and G2 know they don't want to allow Origen to start leashing Baron a second time in a row. That's why Caps walks up. The moment Caps walks his way here, it tells you they're going to do something to try to make something happen. The moment that you see Caps in mid lane, you have to be a little bit scared as Patrick, because suddenly you're actually very far up, and he is scared. He starts to walk away, and that part is fine. But you sometimes are surprised by how far Realm Warp can get you. So Realm Warp here, the flanking Realm Warp, Ryze only needs to be on the Pixel Brush because we're way after level 11. And suddenly, Patrick has to leave the control ward, and all the vision from Origen, the fact that they don't have their members in position to actually say, hey, face check this or you're in trouble, the fact that they're very clearly doing multiple things with Baron vision, allows for this really great flank. From that position with the Realm Warp, Patrick has no escape plan. If you notice the remaining members of Origen, they're very slow to respond to what the Realm Warp could do. So actually, Urgot and Zoe can never be involved in this play, and there's no safe side for Patrick to try to kite to. Now, it takes a long time to die in this play, but it's another reason why Origen is so strong with Ryze. Ryze this game has been able to get favorable side matchup. Realm Warp can subvert warding conventions in a very clear fashion, as we see with the Realm Warp play there. And if you ever don't dot all your I's, cross all your T's against a Ryze, and even if you do, the Realm Warp might hurt a formation that makes sense against not Ryze. So, given just how good G2 are at using Ryze, and both Wonder and Caps have had some unbelievable Realm Warp plays this season, as everyone who saw the Fnatic series would know, it's just a really good capitalization from G2, and in hindsight, Patrick greeding for half a wave. But it's not like it was the most obvious greed. Like, Perkz was far more conspicuously at fault for overstaying in the bot lane around the outer turret, and yet Patrick got collapsed on because the tools available to G2 were more creative. But coming back to the Spirit Visage, it was very much the Spectre's Cowl into situational. You would always assume Adaptive Helm because you're against Ryze in the side lane for a lot of the game, and Ryze obviously is a machine gun mage. The Spirit Visage synergy is actually most interesting for one reason. It's most interesting on... there's two reasons. The boring... Well, it's just one reason, because I was going to say two reasons, the CDR, but it was Spectre's Cowl into full-on Spirit Visage, and both Spirit Visage and Adaptive Helm give 10% CDR. And it definitely is related to getting to 40% CDR cap. That's where Urgot really, again, new Urgot goes up. But actually the coolest synergy is on Triumph, because he's a very high health champion as Urgot. And when we finally see an Urgot ult go off, the Triumph proc does get amped by the Spirit Visage healing, and the Redemption also works with it as well. And the Triumph proc actually is really big when the teamfight phase comes around. Is that enough to justify not Adaptive Helm here? Maybe not. The Conqueror synergy is there as well, that you need to think about. But the Conqueror healing that Urgot does with this new Conqueror Urgot, you definitely feel in team fights because he gets access to all the vitals. And the Triumph proc is there too. So the two of those being amped by Spirit Visage is very interesting. It feels a bit too mad scientist for me over Adaptive Helm. But yeah, it's very interesting as an idea of an approach to take. I'd love to just meet Alfari and ask him about it. Maybe I'll try to DM him about it. As the Adaptive Helm, I think, is what 9.5 out of 10 people take, and it was very interesting to see a different choice here. But that pick, like we're talking about before, suddenly the Baron control is slowed down again from Origen. Now they're feeling, once again, they need another 3 minutes to simulate the Baron setup, and their first Baron that got to 2,000 health was at 23 minutes. We are now 30 minutes into the game. And the problem of having no one sent against Ryze becomes more and more important when more and more items are done from G2. That means they can burst one person harder. So Caps continues to make it about him. You'll notice 2,000 gold lead. It's a way bigger lead on Caps, though, because he also has a 2-level lead on everyone. So Caps is super, super far ahead at this point in the game. And the lack of a good matchup is there. And you get to scenarios like this where you don't feel like you can send multiple members to put down those 3 control wards in the Baron pit, because you know what G2 has that we haven't discussed? G2's other thing they love to do is the piggyback plays. And by piggyback plays, I mean both teleport solo laners, go to the same lane, and kill the defending person. Ryze has no bad matchup, and if you're sending Nuke Duck there in the 1v1, Hecarim can engage from off the screen super fast, and they can blow up Nuke Duck or Alphari. And suddenly, OG didn't get the Baron vision. They couldn't cement the Baron vision. They don't have control. If there's 3 control wards down and you make the piggyback play, Origen can turn on Baron and probably burn it, and that's a mistake. But if there's, without being able to send a whole team there to put down the 3 control wards that so far have failed you twice, you're really worried about piggyback play on your 1 and then Ryze just casually nuking down turrets. These are all the mind games that are going on here. This is why I was really enjoying this series, because this is really hard. And Origen have been burned twice around Baron. One of it more of a mistake, the other one a bit unclear of a call. But they know they can't do anything until they get Baron, because Baron's the only way to trivialize how strong Ryze is in the side lane. And you start to get scenarios like this, where Origen lose the vision around Baron, and the enemy has Control Ward and Tremor Sense, and then now you need more people to put down vision around the Baron. And this is where you get a bit feisty. Like, you want to start pressing your buttons as OG, but the way you lose this game in your heads is some sort of a team fight. G2 actually have a gold lead, you know, at this point in the game. And now Origen are forced into a Baron play because they have caps hitting the turret. They can't deal with that. They need to all in on a Baron. We'll watch this one again slower, but let's talk about this scenario. So this is the game state where Origen's like, shit, the game plan, our early game, it means nothing now. We're losing. And they're losing by a lot. The gold lead shows 3,400. That doesn't matter. The Infernals read 2-0. That doesn't matter. The problem here is they have no assignment against caps. They have no Baron control to be able to bait Baron. The only way they can change the game state right now is to start Baron and take the fight. They can't choose for the perfect fight. They can't dot their I's, cross their T's. They no longer have a long leash to decide how this game is being played out. They've been split too hard by caps. And G2 being able to be respectful around the push and pull around Baron, and also catch them when Origen was making mistakes around Baron. So Origen start the leash, and they either have to finish it or turn decisively. They can't be a back away quietly into their jungle like we saw previously, because Cap's just like, thank you very much, I'm going to take your inhibitor. So they got to burn it down. You can't be half-hearted here. You just lose the game if you don't make a clear call. And to their credit, Origen finally do make a clear call. They turn super hard into the middle of the fight. Cold this time ults. Remember the first time at 23 minutes, no ult was used by Galio or Jarvan because they were just like muddled between two ideas. This one is a clear one because it has to be. Caps is not there just yet. Problem is, as we see as the fight begins, Cold dies getting into the middle of the fight. And that's just, you know, he has to fight. He has to dive in. So what I assumed in team fights here was that Patrick would never be under any threat of Hecarim because you just hold Kai'Sa ult for the scenario where you Kai'Sa ult away from Hecarim. And the early game going to the team, going to Origen, further suggested there would be no way for Patrick to be under threat. Because remember, Origen were winning this game and had game control. But I think Patrick really misplays this fight. If you watch Patrick in particular, the Kai'Sa, he actually gets Onslaught Shadowed and then assume he only has one exit path because of where they're fighting around. And he just straight up dies. But Alphari is now what we're going to pivot to. So I feel like Kai'Sa should never die here. Either stopwatch is done or you ult away. It didn't happen. And that's, you know, stuff happens. What I want you to notice at the end of this, because it feels like this is going to just be a wipe for G2, right? Is watch the health bar of Alphari. 558. So we're watching Alfari here. 558 through Conqueror and Triumph. He actually is way more... That's what you're seeing from what the Spirit Visage can do. And in this fight, it doesn't end up at the start deciding all of it. But remember, he resurrects in a 4v1. And watch the healing numbers. 45, 81, 678 Triumph heal, 65 heal. Conqueror and Spirit Visage is actually ridiculous onto this situation here. He doesn't have Summoner here or anything like that, right? Yeah, you want to check it, but the healing here is insane with Spirit Visage. Let's count the heal. Let's do maths together. 50, 558, 608 healing so far. This is just the numbers we can see. He dies. There was definitely some healing in there. 600. I'm not going to include... The Spirit Visage does work on Guardian Angel Res, by the way, so that's even more healing, but we won't include that. 45, 81, so that's... so we're at 605, 710. He gets another 600 heals. 1,300, 1,400 heal, not including the Spirit Visage buff on the revive. I gotta say... This scenario doesn't happen very often, that we see that even a team fight with the Spirit Visage Triumph Conqueror going, but I hope Sword was watching that and he was like, yes, my precious Urgot. Like, very interesting to see how much Spirit Visage did. Now, if you say PapaSmithy, does that mean I should put Spirit Visage and Urgot? I would say no, because I think Adaptive Helm helped him more in the 1v1 he was opting out of, and I think on average would help you way more, but interesting to see how much Conqueror Spirit Visage does. The takeaway from this team fight is that Origen had to start Baron, so they're never going to get the fight they want. I think Kai'Sa misplays it, because I think Kai'Sa should never die to the Hecarim engage they have going on. But OG actually salvaged it pretty well, all things considered. But this is what a messy fight looks like, a rushed fight, where you can't dunk on a Hecarim in a side lane, where you can't set up ideally. It has to be something like that, and Caps has a huge gold lead. He gets to enter when he decides to enter, which is fairly late, and he gets to flex on the enemy, right? That's just what happens. We'll watch it one more time. The zoom in here. I love this technology. It's hard for them to use it too much because they keep having to go straight into a team fight, but I'm looking forward to playing around with stuff like that. They teleport straight in and say we have to make it about the Baron. The problem is that I think at this point, it's kind of understandable that Cold died, but it's just the reality of the 5v4 scenario. So of the Baron scenario they're in, it is a 5v4 for OG, and they lose one, but that's just the timing at which the turn happened. But that's the luxury G2 have with the map position they have, is they've been able to push in, Caps able to enter late after they've just deathballed onto 2. And even though it could have been cleaner, you know, they didn't have to lose the maximum around the Urgot. It was always going to be G2 favored. So Baron on G2. Actually grouping up with Baron is not what you'd normally expect with this Ryze. They don't have teleport on Ryze, so he can't silent as easily. But you want to play 2 lanes as this comp from G2. The visual lag here was so troll. Alright, we'll watch this fight slow motion. So, the reason why I'm surprised they're playing with grouped with Ryze is that Ryze doesn't have flash. And the enemy team is still Galio Jarvan. Now, Galio's ult actually only off cooldown in like 5 seconds. You know, I feel like you really want to have Ryze in a side lane here. And I don't think you want to turret dive Origen, right? Because they have a lot of ways to punish you if you come to them predictably. A lot of AoE knockups and things like that. Now, the only reason to do this is to fast push one lane, you know, to get an inhibitor now. But I feel like with Hecarim, Ryze, Kalista, you're going to be walking into melee range of Taunt and other threats. Like, I don't think you can realistically just explode a turret. And you don't have an ult you can throw. You don't have, say, Gragas Cask and then just DPS down the turret. I guess you could throw Braum in the backline, but then he dies. you know, trying to occupy the backline. So in a grouped scenario, I don't think G2 have a comp that can play one lane very well at all. So that's why I'm initially surprised, but they got Baron, so, you know, you're feeling good. So you understand in general why the play is happening. They don't have any wards top side. So here's a small mistake. We talked about how G2 want to play 2 lanes, and they are, mid and bot. You're against Jarvan, whose engage range is one of the biggest, and you have no flash on caps, no flash on perks. Watch where caps and perks are when the minion wave is dead. They're in the middle of the lane, and if anything, by this point, closer to Raptors than in any other unwarded area. And they have no control on the top side apart from one spotting ward on Urgot, with no idea of where Jarvan is. This is actually very poor lane positioning, waiting for this minion wave. What you want to do is you want to pull back towards the right side of the lane, and you want to pull back because you want to bring the minions up with the Baron buff movement speed faster. So that's why perks is so far down. When you have Baron buff, you want the minions move faster, so you want to bring it up. But you just should always be on the right side. Now, if someone in chat's saying they didn't expect Cold, big misplay, it's more they didn't respect Cold, not that they didn't expect it. Like, he's the only one that can show any threat on them. And there's only one area he can come from because they have all the vision on the right side. So if they expect, respect, think of Cold, you just stand towards the, you know, destroyed part of the mid lane turret on the right side of the lane. Instead, just comes in, and like maybe it doesn't avert Cold getting in there. You know, I'm arguing you shouldn't have Kalista and Ryze in the same lane without flash at this point in the game. But the fact that they decided to have both of them there and then didn't stand in the right part of the lane is kind of a double whoopsie, is the way I would look at that one. Caps didn't want, actually, I have Grabs in chat. Thank you very much. Let's read that one. Grabs. Caps didn't want to split Flashless versus Galio J4 on side versus either Galio or Zoe. Also, if we don't ult Braum out and he soaks Zoe spells, Ryze lives and we should still win. We'll get to the second part here. The theory there of not wanting to have split versus Flashless Jarvan and Zoe, or Galio J4 is spot on, right? That's a good, quick answer. My small counter argument is that if you're playing mid bot and you have bot side control, you should be able to outnumber faster than the enemy. But even ignoring that, even with that being the call, which, yep, safety-wise is fine, the lane positioning here and not thinking about where J4 is just a straight-up mistake if that's the clear call. But thank you very much for the update. We'll focus on the second point from Grabs about how they played out the fight. So it's... Sorry, I'm trying to do 2 things at once and keep Grabs' message up on my other... Let's watch it slower. The visual lag actually makes it... So we get to this point. Yep, the engage happens. Now, once this starts, there's no ending this problem. Because, obviously, big issue here is that Galio is going to register and no one can flash out. So let's watch how much damage Zoe does, because I see what you're saying. Braum gets Fate's Cold here, so it's just caps and perks. Yankos and Hecarim are nowhere to go. There's no front line, it's only squishies. So how much does Zoe do at the start? Interesting. Does Q miss? I guess it does. This must be max range Q missing, right? Because I'm looking at health buzz. It would have hit Braum. None of it hits. The trouble bubble hits at the end. That was actually very close to being an instant deletion because they Braum ulted, but with hindsight, actually, maybe... What has Braum got cooldown-wise at this point as well? Uses R and then goes out, so no E is used. If he had stayed, the first E would have been negated, but the first E missed anyway. I feel like I don't necessarily agree with you, Grabs. I don't know if you have any further messages here, but trying to rewatch it, like, in slow motion, I agree that, like, Kai'Sa shouldn't ult there, but if we're going to be hindsight orientated about this, I feel like at the end of the day, it wouldn't have changed anything. It's much more about the respect factor. I think that caught out a lot there. Like the moment that you see the map positioning of Jankos near Wolves and Hecarim pushing in further, it shows that like it was muddied for sure. Could definitely approach that. And then, you know, the choice of playing one lane, which, like you say, was Caps not wanting to split without Flash. Instead, it's overextending without Flash, right? So, not calling out anyone, by the way. I really appreciate Grabs coming in and communicating here. It's very interesting to hear coaches come in. I loved when Reapid was in another day earlier. So, G2, yeah. Fixable mistake, by the way. And this is like the sort of thing that Grabs would love to see, because on their VOD review as a team, it's very easy to just add an extra step. What you do as a coach here is you add an extra step of, you can never recreate this game scenario, but you can definitely discuss things like, all right, let's say we get a Baron and we don't have Flash. What are the things we should think about in that case? Because you are not going to be on the stage as the coach to work on the kind of communication. Like, you're not a part of the communication like like an in-game leader in CSGO. So you need, what I would do is to upskill pro players with like kind of like algorithms of like, if this is the game state, what are those things we remember we should be thinking about? And in this case, it's who are their engagers, what angles can they engage from with our map situation, and where should we stand around that? So this is a small place where that fell apart. They've been very, very good otherwise at playing the map, just like they were with Caps, forcing Origen to start Baron, which got G2 the Baron. So this is not a core problem of G2. This is just a mistake that G2 made. This was a very interesting one for me, right? Is this back timing. I was talking about this on the LCK Discord. The Spirit Visage, we saw work, and we're like, okay, I think Adaptive Helm most of the time, but Spirit Visage was pretty cool the one time we saw it, and it works with Conqueror. QSS at this point was very, very interesting, because you look at the enemy team, and you consider what Urgot would need to QSS. I feel like you're not going to QSS the Hecarim Fear. It's not long enough, and it doesn't really change, because you can just, you got 5 points in W, so you just machine gunning people. You're not QSSing anything from Rek'Sai. You're not QSSing anything from Kalista. Braum, yes, is someone you can QSS, but like I feel like the QSS value is quite middling. And then Ryze, like Ryze and Braum are both middling. So the only interaction I thought of was, can you QSS Kalista Spears? Because actually Kalista's really good against frontliners like Urgot and anyone with Stoneplate. There's no Stoneplate in this game, but usually you see Stoneplate. You used to be able to QSS Spears. I don't think you can anymore. I think it doesn't count, because I think it's only crowd control or debuffs. But there was definitely a time when you could QSS Spears, and actually QSS was an underbought item in hindsight against Kalista. Because if you guys don't understand why Kalista beats Stoneplate, it's that Kalista would dump all her spears into anyone she could hit, the front line, and then she wouldn't actually use Rend until after Stoneplate had worn off. And then even in the scenario where that wasn't enough to kill, the spears would still be there on that first person. You'd use the Q to push them to a backline and basically instant kill people. So in that scenario, back in the day, it actually turns out maybe you should have considered. But I'm getting a lot of confirmations here that you can't use it against Kalista anymore, which makes sense. That's my read on current time as well. So then I'm like, I feel like QSS is insanely slot inefficient here. And by what I mean by that is, you know, there are games where you're against only Skarner and you're like, I have to buy QSS for Skarner. That ability is just too much. And for suppression, you know, sadly you got to pay your tax. But it almost feels like Alfari is paying German tax when he just needs to pay British tax and he's exempt from German tax, because I just don't feel like this is a game where, for Urgot in particular, a frontliner with Guardian Angel, Thornmail, Spirit Visage, he needs to pay any taxes. Like, I actually think he's tax exempt in this game. And I just remember that the worst thing about QSS, especially for someone like Ryze, right? When you build QSS against a Skarner, you're like, I can't eat, like, Makira's Scimitar? Ugh. I don't even have an item to build from it. Merc Scimitar you can build, and Alfari eventually will build, but that means that right now, at 35 minutes with 63,000 gold in the game, you're clogging your last item slot not with a control ward, not with a Giant's Belt, Spectre's Cal, whatever, but with a QSS that I think the actual active of, with how the fights work out, does very little. And you're also future-proofing that you can never buy another item because you're going to eventually just be like, I guess Merc Scimitar. It's really, it costs more than it appears. It's not just the gold, it's the fact that you can't have another item in that slot, and the further item is okay, but doesn't really do too much for you. So I just feel like it doesn't really do anything for, and it kind of costs you things. You can't even, I feel like a control ward is better than a QSS 99% of the time. And 2 control wards, and shut up, like, take my money. Like, 2 control wards and a elixir, I think, is way better than a QSS at this point in the game. You're only now just getting back into the game. You only now just want a team fight to not lose the game. Like, I want a control ward and the ability to, you know, fight for Mountain Drake in the future. And people are talking about things like Death's Dance and Righteous Glory. Remember, he had probably 1,500 gold, right? He didn't have 3,000. I think at this point, no intermediate item is better than 2 control wards. And if you ask me, is Righteous Glory or a full Death's Dance better? Like, it probably, if you can afford to buy it, like, after you put down your control ward, definitely. But, you know, thinking about where the game is at, I was really, really curious. It put me on this deep rabbit hole trying to work out how Callista Spears works. I was like, is this actually the next level build? But in hindsight, no. So we're looking at the map state here. Game has obviously been up and down, as we know. I agree, Vedius. I'm talking to Vedius the caster who was listening, not Vedius the ward, which died. This has been a pretty high-level game. There's been mistakes on both sides, but like, I like that both teams are trying to subvert what they know the enemy team wants to do. And there's also been some good capitalizations as well, which is really good to see. This is a really enjoyable game, number one. Still, G2 control the map. For the first time, it feels like in a long, long time. They have a lot of map control now. This time, they're not going to walk up and get EQR'd by Cold in the same brush a million times in a row. But the next Baron is spawning, and this time, again, they can make it about their control of the game. The early moments, the first 30 minutes that Origen had lots of Baron control, feel a long way in the rearview mirror now. And then now their comp kind of needs a bit of time and invitation to get going. Zoe, for all her strengths, wants space and time to poke. She doesn't do enough in an instant burst. More often than not, with frontline items being complete. With a vision disadvantage, Zoe very often struggles to do a lot of damage. Wanda can push up. Mentioned there about triple lifesteal. This is very much the standard Callista build. Even against teams stacking armor, you will see double lifesteal before something like a Last Whisper, and still something like Last Whisper skipped over. No Conqueror or anything like that. It's purely because there's so many threats that can kill a Callista in like medium range on every team. Just like the team here, like even Urgot's doing a lot of damage to Callista, that double lifesteal and uptime on like 40% lifesteal in team fights means that you just live long enough to always choose the right moment for spears. So that's why you see it. Amusingly, it also means that Callista can solo Baron for like longer than any other AD carry can around Baron, which is a really important thing. So for Callista to be relevant, double lifesteal I think is by far the core build. Days of Rage Blade, Last Whisper and things are gone. So, Origen will most certainly, or most likely, have to once again do something that G2 starts. They're picking up mini waves in bot. Super hard collapse here. So Origin Dream team fight. Let's see why it starts. So they know that Alphari needs to teleport. And this is all about Wonder wanting to start a fight really bad. They chunk out Galio. They already have a lot of Baron control, but they're super hard engaging onto Patrick because his flash is down. That's the call here. They get Nuke Duck and Patrick in their CC engage. And at that point, you're like, all right, this can only go good for G2. But if you notice, the thing you can do with Galio, Jarvan, and Teleport is that no longer is it that Hecarim and the rest of the team got access to Origin's squishy backline. Instead, already, like 3 seconds later, Wonder's threat is gone. He can damage Cold and Patrick for a long time, but he no longer has CC threat. Galio, of course, can come in, and Galio and Jarvan do this, where I want you to look at the concentric circles of Cataclysm and, the Galio Hero's Entrance landing into soon-to-be Taunt Field. Suddenly, Jankos, Perks, Caps can do nothing to Nuke Duck or Patrick. And Mickey X died trying to make this play happen. So I feel like it's a little bit misjudged here into how much they can get done. It's Guardian Angel, Kai'Sa as well, and they don't even come close to putting Kai'Sa into Guardian Angel. We talked about our skepticism of Hecarim versus Kai'Sa as a champion. This is more of a team fight where that's relevant for me because Patrick is flashless, right? And as you notice, really is under no threat from Wonder at any point. And the moment that this can happen, where you can fight front to back with Alphari getting the first kill into Mithy and Nuke Duck, this goes back to our champ select analysis of like, don't know about the Hecarim blind pick being so susceptible to Kai'Sa as a champion. So really, really big kind of over pursuit to make that happen. Kai'Sa close to full build. Shield was like just insanely large. And now we get to map decisions. Teleport onto the minions rather than onto the Baron, as you notice on the top right side of the screen. So Nuke Duck used his Alphari used his teleport there. So important information is that Wonder has TP and that Caps will have TP when he comes back from base. Pretty predictable. Always the right way to go, it feels like, in this meta with things like Demolish and high damage top laners. Looking for plays in the top side. Good thing from Fairly Animal. Kai'Sa ult, Galio ult, Redemption, and GA. You're not even mentioning Cataclysm, Galio Taunt. Like, yes, I agree that's a questionable engage. The engage comms would have been, Patrick doesn't have flash, let's get him. But given the whole game state, I think it probably wasn't the right call. They also had first Baron control, so they weren't actually being rushed into the decision. Like when we questioned Origin around Baron, we said, well, they had to start the Baron, otherwise they were going to get split to hell. G2 could have done a lot of things, and instead decided to make that questionable engage. So Origin, take the Baron from that, as we know. No inhibitor was taken, importantly, through all of this. Watch this play already. So Origin start to walk up. Origin trying to make it about one lane is exactly what they want to do. We already, as you remember, 5 minutes ago, we're talking about how G2 played one lane, and I was surprised not to see Caps on the side lane. Meanwhile, Origin have Zoe and a very strong front line that wants to tank damage while Kai'Sa explodes at turrets. So they definitely want to play one lane. They don't want to play 2 lanes because that's where Hecarim can come from a surprising angle. That's where a Realm Warp can collapse onto 4 before someone can respond. So you see Origin are going to be a lot more conga line about their plays. But the moment that you have a comp that wants to play one lane and that doesn't just have a super one lane winner like a Caitlyn, for example, you end up playing one lane. So Origin turn on to Baron here. Now, Origin are in an interesting spot. Realm Warp, it's important to know this, Realm Warp was never used. So Realm Warp has a very long cooldown. It was never used. So the fact that it's still available, is known to Origen. G2 going mid lane while Origen tried to say, calm down bot lane and fight us, is the right call from them. So far it's standard here. This part makes sense. Yeah, they take an inner turret, which doesn't really matter. They chase away G2. But from here, you have to remember Realm Warp and the fact that G2 can Realm Warp in minions closer to an inner turret, and they also have a naked inhibitor on the bot side. So this is where Origen need to really quickly think about their options. They have Baron buff, important to remember, so they can get back, but Baron buff is still 4 seconds recall into 3-4 seconds of running from base. So it's not like you just instantly show up next to your inhibitor. So this is where you have to make a hard call. What are we doing? The call is just to take Elder and accept inhibitor going down. Probably fine, all things being considered. It doesn't feel great, but it's a decent trade. You have double Infernal, so right now the call is, all right, give up the Infernal. We're going to give up the Elder. We're going to get mid lane inhibitor. We can't fight for it. And that's the right call from G2. The call from Origen is we're going to lose mid lane inhibitor, but then we're going to have double Infernal, double amped with the Elder Drake, a potential win condition with the Elder Dragon number 2 spawning. I think overall, it's a pretty good call in hindsight from both teams here. I think it's fine. Because now it's much harder for G2 to ignore Origen, and now this play of playing through one lane is deadly because everyone's a turret destroyer. So I think that's the right call on both sides. And that's a pretty good play from both teams here. There's nothing for G2 to fight for here and nothing for Origen to fight for, so they try to bait something at the start. It doesn't work. But then G2 still look for a collapse. Now, let's think about why G2 might want to continue to fight. The reasons for this in some ways is this is very narrow choke where Hecarim is actually very powerful because the AoE fear is likely to hit everyone. They can also undo Zoe as a champion because Zoe does not want to fight within melee range of people. Most people would give up Origen to back away here because the Elder Dragon buff is still on them. And yet, they engage the fight. This is another one of those shot calls from G2 that I think most teams don't make or don't capitalize on properly. But it gets away quite a lot of Elder Dragon time, and overall a 2-for-1 trade when you just lost your inhibitor is really meaningful at 42 minutes. You might say, PapaSmithy, why? We're 42 minutes in. What's the difference now? Death timers for a team like Origen who were trying to get an inhibitor back away and then reset on the map. Origen really want to reset first and strongest because they are the team that wants to defend an objective and have you walk through trouble bubbles. G2 are the team who can be creative about how they engage from different spots. If G2 get a lead in terms of vision during death timers, the next time an objective happens, they're going to have teleport wards, they're going to have flank information, they're going to know a lot more about what's happening, and Origen can't make them as predictable because G2 have an information advantage. So death timers being longer means it's not on the map for a long time. If you die early in the game, remember you're dead for like, what, 4 seconds. Karthus doesn't even have a gray screen when he dies at level 1 or 2. He just runs straight back to the dragon after his passive. Getting 2 kills here and taking away some Elder Dragon value, but also getting first reset onto the map is pretty underrated for a team that just lost their inhibitor. And it was also fighting in terrain that was never going to suit the Zoe in particular. So I actually really like how they approach that particular all-in. So G2 reset. As you can see, the vision is neutral, slight advantage to G2 around the top side. Cool, Scimitar done. I already had my words about that. And the bonus vision G2 got is wards like the ward at the tip of the Baron Pit, the control ward sticking at the top side. I don't know if that's a new ward or an old ward. Let's find out. It's an old ward, but a good one. Good ward for a Hecarim teleport to. And G2 just don't want a 5v5 front to back, ever, as Vedius is talking about. So Caps pushes in. Hecarim pushes in. The frontline all-in is available, as you can see, but Origen, you know, they're taking the measured approach. They're backing away. They're thinking more about vision here. They don't have deep wards. They don't have intimate information about what G2 want to do. But eventually they do make the front door play. So let's watch this one. So, knowledge-wise, flashes up on everyone. Cleanse down, exhaust down when it comes to G2. Origen have no flash on Kai'Sa, but otherwise at full strength. I really like how Origen make this happen. This is really smart play from Origen. What you'll notice is they make a play that looks a little bit curious, and the Patrick instantly ults straight onto multiple enemies, but consider who can't be there when he presses R. Ryze can't be there. Hecarim is too far away and hadn't channel teleport before, so even with his speed can't be there. And Patrick's going to have Galio ult on top of him. So no one is going to be able to kill the Kai'Sa, and they're definitely going to pick at least one person. They instantly blow up Jankos, the Smite, with Baron spawning. So really good capitalization from Origen. It was a timer where the moment that G2 pushes up that far, the all-in is available. The all-in is taken there, but this is classic G2, right? You just lost your jungler. What do you do? Well, the standard play is that Caps pushes up and that G2 get worried about the Baron and try to defend it. Instead, Caps Realm Warps in, Wander wastes time, and they just start Baron straight up. Because there is no assignment to answer the Ryze that doesn't stop Baron from happening. Because Ryze is so strong as a 1, it's going to take 2 members to get there. Alphari has already teleported, so he's definitely not going to be there, and the Ryze is already an issue, as we know. So they instantly have Caps call that I'm going to go to the inhibitor, start the Baron. We already noted that Perks has picked this Kalista, who is uniquely 180 carry, who going double lifesteal or triple lifesteal can tank the Baron and actually start it alone. They know there shouldn't be any vision around this area because of the fact that the reset was later. And so they go for both. And this smash and grab is why I look at G2 and I'm like, this is a smart team. Because they make some real boneheaded choices. But this is a... Like, consider this, again, just go all the way back. G2 move up and the all-in is available. Origen blow all their ults to make it happen. Only Alphari has ult. The teleport to make it happen. Isn't it amazing that from this map state at 45-43, in a 4v5 for over 1 minute, Ryze instantly Realm Warp, gets in there, has teleport to try to respond to a Baron play, and they also understand what they can do around Baron. And then suddenly, Origen have to send multiple members to stop Ryze, and if the moment that Jarvan is there, you finish Baron. You don't even have to consider it. You have the same secure on the Kalista, and from here onwards, the decision is taken away from their hands. They already can't contest the Baron. They will lose Baron. Really, really good Baron call, and also, you know, just going to be Ryze doing Ryze things. I don't think Caps needed to flash here, but, you know, he was obviously thinking about the 6-item outplay. This is really, really well played. Grabs. If you think we make boneheaded choices on stage, you should see our scrims. In case people from the VODs are unaware, this is G2's coach, Grabs. The thing is that, like, I think that G2, just like IG were accused of, use a lot of their games to test things and test their limits. And I think testing the limits plays didn't work in the there being huge amounts of vision available at all times 2017 and previous meta, and do work now and are required now. And I think they're the sign of a smart team. So I'm, you know, taking my hats off. This is a really, really good play from G2. They get Inhibitor and Baron 4v5. That happened. They got both. They didn't even need to fight. They took a loss and got way more. Because they leveraged their strongest member in Caps to take the Inhibitor very, very quickly. And maybe he shouldn't have flashed, but otherwise whatever. And they understood what they had on the other side of the map. Awesome. Awesome from G2. And someone in chat, Lord Paris said, the biggest problem between OG and G2 is G2 plays to win and OG not to lose, as you see in this situation. See, I don't agree. I don't think Origen plays not to lose. I think Origen looks for the 90% play. Origen does what every Korean team does pretty much to this day. They look for the 90%, and they'll take every 90% and ignore 70% and 60% plays because they're waiting for the better spot. They're waiting for the 90%. But there aren't anywhere near as many 90% plays anymore. There are no guaranteed you're going to get this and lose nothing. You're going to have to make your trades. And that happens as early as level 2 with Scuttle Crab fights. And that was a trade that G2 lost. But G2 recognize 65% plus plays way more than most teams in the world do. And they create 50% plays that they make work. But they make their bets reliably, and I think they understand their limits better than other teams, whereas other teams are thinking about what the coach told them, what they practiced, their drills. They're very well oiled, very well drilled. They're very reliable. But that means that they choose to ignore or pass over the sort of things that will win you games. G2 here makes a 50-50, a 55 play, maybe. Like, it's a pretty tricky play to make, and they make it decisively. And that's cool to see. Like, this is really, really impressive. Someone's laughing about how I'm not going to finish on time. I've only got 3.5 hours for the rest of this VOD review. But game 1 is where I wanted to index most of my time. And game 3, obviously, is kind of like a victory lap. So, yeah, I'm going to have to be done within 3.5 hours. But I don't feel that any of this is time wasted. Like, this is a weird series to choose for a VOD review because game 1 is super hype. It's a 3-0. And then game 2 and 3, there was a lot of words like tilt and this use. What we want to understand is how good is G2? How good is Origen? What happened in game 2? What did I see? What did you guys see? And what did we learn that can help us predict Origen Fnatic and potentially, G2 versus the winner? And I think there's a lot in this game, but actually some really interesting things in games 2 and 3. Regardless, this game's almost done. So Baron is taken. G2, not as boldly playing multiple lanes right now. Cap's flashed again, so he doesn't get to play side lane ever in this game, apparently. Ever again, I should say. So it becomes about Elder. Remember, G2 still don't want to play a front-to-back team fight because that is where Urgot is so good in the late game. Urgot has unbelievable damage. He's bought tankiness, and he just shreds you, right? He executes you. The AoE fear means you win a team fight harder. So, once again, we get to this scenario, and G2's like, well, we don't want a 5v5 fight. And Origen should also know that. Realm Warp is also available again. The moment you see Galio walk into the brush like that, you know they're finishing the Elder, and you know you don't want to fight. So, here's G2's decision. Caps goes mid lane, as you would expect. And they go for both. They say, I'm going in as Yankos, and I'm going to try and steal the Elder. And they steal the Elder. And they get to teleport in with the minions, with the Elder buff, and that means the speed's going to be too fast. Now, what I want you guys to notice is, at this point, G2, at this point, let's ask chat. What if G2 goes mid lane as 5, Realm Warps in, and tries to end the game? What happens? Do they win the game for sure? That's a question I want to ask chat. If they go as 5. They probably don't win, right? They could win, though. Like, it's definitely not for sure they don't win there. If you just throw all your damage, right? So there's a lot of damage, right? But what are their chances of winning? Like, 25% they win there, 30%, 40% maybe maximum. At best, a 50-50. But you know what? They probably don't win there, right? Because some people recall early from OG. The people that do recall will recall with Elder. So you probably lose, right? Okay. What if Braum just runs in, flash Rs, hits everyone, and delays the recall for a while? Do Origen win? Do G2 win in that case? if it's just Braum going in and stopping backs. So that means he dies, sort of quickly, but he unbreakables, he exhausts somebody. G2 probably win. Like, we're at like 65%, because by then, like, yes, you're coming in with Elder, but Ryze is just like 3-shotting the Nexus, right? At that point, it's higher. I would say, would you agree, yes or no, that Braum just using all his stuff to interrupt people is better than 5 people going mid and just realm warping? That's the only argument here. Is choice 1 was realm warp as a 5. Choice 2 is Braum interrupting, realm warp as 4. And how will the 4 members do? Yes, so we agree with that. Now, they choose to also invest Jankos' time. Jankos is going to go into the pit. Now, you can agree that if 3 people realm warp in with Elder Dragon buff, everything blows up super quick and G2 100% win. Now, what if G2 realm warp in and Jankos predictably doesn't get the Baron? Doesn't get the Elder, I should say. Well, then you have 2 people interrupting backs, and you definitely are going to interrupt backs for longer than if it was just the support, and you probably still win 85 to 90% of the time. If you get the Elder, it's 100. If you don't get the Elder with 2 people stopping backs, it's at least 85%. So you make that play. And that's the play they make. That's exactly why they make this choice. And you know what? Did they put as many thoughts into all the possible counterbalances as we just did with pausing, with slow motion? No. But they made the right play. Intuitively understood the scenario, rushed in. It wasn't close to G2 being able to not win that game. That was the right way to go. This intuitive play is the one they chose. And the intuitive play won. And that's another kind of smaller example of G2 having clearly a really good balance of 5 players to make the right call. A lot of teams make many different calls to G2, and sometimes they can sit back and laugh and be like, we would never have done that. What? Those guys are idiots. But if you bat at their average, you hit home runs more than people think. And that's why G2 is really, really smart. And coming from this game, I was like, okay, I feel like Origen are definitely tilted. And part of that is because they were in charge of the game for so long and then lost. And you know what? That sucks as a pro player, right? But the actual tilt factor and how I thought the tilt would manifest, I think is different to what a lot of people thought. Because pro gamers are the top 1% of players. They're super strong players at the game. Top 0.1, top 0.01, right? Not many people get to be a pro player. They're all really good at clicking their buttons. But the things in control of pro players is usually what they're good at. They're very good at playing winning matchups and killing people. Or, learning to be respectful when they should be respectful. But when you have control of a game for so long, and then the game in many ways feels like it should have been yours, and then some things didn't happen, then you lost, it depowers you a lot. You're like, I think all 5 members of Origen walk away frustrated and like, I think I mostly did what I needed to do. I guess I made a small mistake, one mistake, but I don't think that lost us the game. Like, you feel very unfulfilled as an Origen player after this loss. And then the most recent thing you remember is that Elder was stolen and you lost. And so my big worry for Origen going forwards was that they would take this loss and pinpoint the wrong reason for the loss. And the wrong reason for the loss is, we should have been better around the Elder and Sin Jankos come in, then it wouldn't have gotten stolen. That is by no means the point of why they lost this game. But that's often how pro players react. Is like, shit, we got Elder Dragon stolen, that's the reason we lost. But actually, that's the last thing you should be thinking about. Like, this game was lost at your inability to play smartly around Baron from 23 to 33 minutes in the game. This game was the fact that they weren't assertive when it was their invitation to be assertive, and then G2 were very assertive, but made more chances for them to be assertive. Like, Origen decided the game at 23 minutes by getting Baron to 2,000, then kiting away, and then at 29 minutes, and then they eventually had to all in when G2 started to take control. And then G2 from there were too far forward in the mid lane, did other things, but they made their luck so many times. They made I think G2 made, I would say, 4 65 to 70% plays for themselves in the last 20 minutes of the game. They took all four and they went 3-1 on them. Maybe, I can't really argue much different to that. And then they won. And so my big worry for Origen going into game two, what would show tilt to me was more inactivity and more safety. If I'm the coach, I'm there with Origen saying, good job, guys. Really good early game. We had Yankos in the hole. We just need to be able to turn that into objectives after that. Whether you got Elder or not, as chat identified here, is not important. The game was there to be won way earlier, and you need to be more decisive. And decisiveness, as we noted from the champion kills per minute being quite low on the side of Origen, it's not one of their natural traits. And then they just lost a game where Elder was stolen. So let's see if we can find a way for them to step up is what I would be focusing on a coach. But really, really interesting game. And I think it paints a lot about what Origen is as a team and what G2 is. And I don't think anyone can come away from this being like G2's a bad team. Sorry, or Origen's a bad team or G2's a bad team. But the Origen point is more nascent because they lost. I think you can see that Origen, if they made slight adjustments earlier, the rest of the game doesn't play out that way. And even when they don't make those, they make pretty nice collapse all in all. So I think G2 has gotten plenty of praise from me. The thing I could walk away is like Origen are not that far away from beating G2 in this game. But they were significantly far enough away that they lost. And it's a best of 5. You don't get to VOD review and spend 3 hours talking about it. So game number 2, we get to see how Origen try to fight back and what comp they take and how G2 approach it. So I'm going to take a short break here. I need to eat a little bit of dinner. Thank you very much for so many people joining in. Grabs was really cool to pick at the brain of the G2 coach who has a lot to think about with Sunday upcoming. But going to take a short break, play some ads, eat some dinner, and we'll be back with some questions and game number 2. So that's my VOD review, G2 versus Fnatic. G2 versus Origen, I should say, game number 1.